One Bach attributes to alien benevolence the discoveries of subatomic physics, general relativity, and the double helix. Xenoarchaeology, the study for evidence of ancient visitation by interstellar travelers, is at best a difficult and confusing field of study, precisely because hopes and expectations are so high. It is often harder to maintain a strong and healthy skepticism. Hence, in the words of astronomer Carl Sagan, we must accept arguments for extraterrestrial visitations to Earth only when the evidence is compelling. At present, an exhaustive survey of all pertinent literature and other evidence fails to uncover a single incontrovertible case of past alien presence on our planet. Of course, there is nothing a priori absurd about the basic idea of ancient astronauts. The hypothesis of mediocrity allows that as a general rule. When one goes exploring, one finds inferior things. For example, Columbus discovered America because European transportation technology was well advanced beyond that of the Native Americans. Were this not the case, the natives would have discovered Europe. It is plausible to conclude that if the galaxy is teeming with life, a superior intelligence from another star system could have visited Earth for any myriad of good reasons. Speculation.
For not so good reasons.
This is true. Speculators can send reasons for areas. First, there is the possibility that aliens arrived at geological timescales, millions or billions of years ago. Hello, Mecca. How do you do?
Hey.
Evening.
I'm talking about the aliens who arrived here millions or billions of years ago.
They interbred with the humans, I think, or the natural born sort of humans. Maybe not millions and billions.
Evidence has been marshaled in an attempt to demonstrate that our natural biological evolution may have been adjusted, enhanced, or tampered with in some manner. So you're on the right path.
I believe it.
Make way for oncoming traffic. Restrict your speed.
Is that extraterrestrial gods and saviors have materially affected the development of human society and culture. The most common evidence advanced in favor of this virtual ubiquity of legends describing visitors of the sky. Usually these yarns seem to suggest either that the human race was exported to Earth from other worlds, or that ETs came among the men and helped them launch civilization. Naturally, a mere account of strange beings who live in the heavens and perform miracles is not compelling proof. Where else might gods reside but in the skies? And the clear correlation between the movement of stars and constellations in the celestial vault and the changing seasons has probably been recognized at least since the emergence of Cro-Magnon man. Primitive belief systems often attribute divinity and magical forces to such regular features in the environment. Yet, how easy it would be for an alien humanoid to curse hapless natives with a portable X-ray machine. It may be that all interstellar first contact operations include thaumaturgy division, whose duty is to create miracles and godlike myths to keep the curious at a safe distance in the unlikely event of an emergency landing. The thaumaturgists could create spectacular displays to all primitive onlookers, such as transmutation of drinking fluids, veritable rigidity lances, and advanced force field technology, which might perhaps be demonstrated on local bodies of water. The third specific area of xenoarchaeology research is the quest for alien artifacts and other physical manifestations of their presence. This is of great importance, because it is often urged that such important matters, the only acceptable evidence would be hardware. For instance, the discovery of an advanced electronics embedded in a coal seam millions of years old, accompanied by indisputable non-human skeletons, might be acceptable as convincing evidence of past visitation. Another common suggestion, is that aliens might have left a durable marker of some kind, such as the black monolith depicted in the science fiction movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. In fact, the moon would be an ideal location. The artifact would last millions of years without disturbance and could only be detected by a reasonably advanced spacefaring civilization. We must beware of technological chauvinism in asserting possible artifacts. We can interpret certain objects as airfields, nails, or evidence of the use of nuclear explosives, but this is because we have just acquired the technology ourselves. 200 years ago, the interpretation would have been much different. 2 centuries hence, it will again radically change. The fact is, the technology of space visitors will most likely be highly non-contemporary with our own. Problems involved in tracking down evidence of extraterrestrial contacts in ancient times are vastly different from those of conventional archaeology and anthropology. It would not be remarkable if a few brief visits by ETs to limited areas of this planet had left no traces. Continental drift and tectonic shifting, ice ages, volcanic activity, and sedimentation will have taken their toll. Archaeologists generally search for human settlements, yet the chances of, say, a spacecraft crash landing near one of these is extremely small. It is highly unlikely we could ever detect anything less than a widespread intensive alien involvement. Let us assume that 10 aerial vehicles crashed somewhere on Earth in ancient times, spewing their debris over a swath covering 10,000 square meters. If the affected stratum is 1 meter deep and lies under an average of 10 meters of sediment, this leaves about 10 to the 15th power cubic meters of soil and rock to be examined. If we then assume that all crashes occurred only over 10% of the Earth's land area and there are 10 archaeologists with suitable engineering and technological credentials searching full-time for the sites, excavating an average of 10 meters to the third power each day per investigation, it would take roughly 15,000 years just to have a 50-50 chance of finding a crash site. Even then, and assuming favorable corrosion conditions, the chances of spotting recognizable remnants of an ancient accident would still be small. For these reasons and others, many have renewed the hunt for reconstructible contact legends passed down from early human civilizations. There is some reason to cautiously assert the validity of this technique, because we know that historical events have occasionally been faithfully reported in myth and folklore. Perhaps the best known of these was the first meeting between the Tlingit people on the northeastern coast of North Africa and a European expedition in 1786, led by the French explorer Jean-Jacques Paris. The oral native Canadians claimed to be a true origin of the century, although some of the descriptions of the advanced European technology, for example, giant sailing ships, had acquired a distinctive mythological flavor over the years, and many other accounts of such phenomena as supernova and great floods likewise throughout the centuries survived magical narration. One useful test of the validity of legendary encounters with ETs might be whether or not information is contained in the tale which couldn't possibly have been generated by the primitive civilization itself. For example, ancient manuscripts containing modern circuit diagrams or a holy number worshipped throughout the ages, which turned out to be the transcendental being of the nuclear fine structure constant, might be sufficient if it could be independently authenticated. Carl Sagan articulated 3 factors which maximize the probability that a historical encounter with aliens will be recorded and reconstructed. The account must have been committed to writing soon after the event. The contact society undergoes a major change because of the contact, and aliens make no attempt to disguise their exogenous nature. If these stringent requirements can be satisfied in even a single instance, xenoarchaeologists may be able to secure proof that Earth has been visited by intelligent ETs. The evidence of man's biogenic evolution interfered with by aliens is scanty and highly questionable. Perhaps one of the earliest mythological accounts of possible biological experimentation is mentioned in Ramayana. The second of great Indian epic poems. Humanuma, the monkey god, was supposedly conceived from Shiva, the lower of the heavens, and Anjana, the earth angel, a sacred cake to eat. The monkey god thus is born super strong and highly intelligent. But despite the fact that Hanuman was followed by legions of other ape heroes, there is never any suggestion that they were biological precursors. Greek mythology is full of tales of interplanetary adultery. Zeus, king of the gods, had scores of human concubines, and reportedly was responsible for many sexual assaults of human beings. Apollo, Aphrodite, Hermes, and Ares all had affairs with human beings. And most biologists agree that successful sexual mating between 2 species from different planets is improbable at best. Although lions and tigers have been crossbred in captivity and survived, such is not the rule. Even Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal man, 2 species of humans, are not believed to have been infertile or interfered. Benevolent ETs would probably have come to Earth not to hybridize or perpetuate their own genome, but to improve ours. This could easily be done by using advanced genetic engineering to accelerate the normal evolutionary process. The native myths of the Marquesas Islands, Hawaii, Indonesia, Tahiti, all tell the first men on Earth were given birth by a celestial couple. If one wanted to do this sort of thing, and a humanoid was the desired end product, it makes sense to modify some of the local primate stock. Marmosets and many other monkeys have the same number of chromosomes as man. Those chimps and orangutans have only 2 extra. Eric von Däniken has suggested something along these lines, although his factual support is notoriously weak. He claims in his several books that man is an artificial mutation, separated from the ape stock long ago by alien intervention. In the chariots of the gods, we find dim ages, long ago, an unknown spaceship discovered our planet. The crew of that spaceship soon found the Earth had all the prerequisites for intelligent life to develop. The spacemen artificially fertilized some human female members of an advanced primate species. They repeated their breeding experiment several times until they produced a creature intelligent enough to have the rules of society imparted to it. The space travelers destroyed the unsuccessful specimens, fearing the men might retrogress and mate with animals. Unfortunately, no solid verifiable facts are adduced in favor of this hypothesis. The area of xenoarchaeology has been severely handicapped by the death of qualified researchers and excessively quality of unusually poor scholarship. A case in point is Mankind, Child of the Stars, by Max H. Flint and Otto O. Binder. Their proposal, simply stated, is that we are the hybridized descendants of extraterrestrial intelligences. Apparently following Larry Niven's excellent science fiction novel Protector, first published 7 years earlier, Flint and Binder assert that the human race is merely a colony founded and maintained, and later abandoned by beings from another world. Decades of detailed paleontological and evolutionary data are casually swept aside. We are asked to believe that man could not have evolved fast enough on Earth, hence the starmen must be responsible. Supposedly, humans are sexier than other animals because ETs were downright lecherous. Not only did starmen bring their own genes to Earth for our benefit, but the primate line was imported as well. As if that weren't enough, the authors of Mankind attributed the evolution of hundreds of species of food animals and other extinct creatures to aliens' kindly influence. Actually, again, factual support is totally non-existent. But serious xenoarchaeological theories are being pursued by competent scientists in spite of the deluge of popularized pseudoscience on the subject. Ronald Bracewell, a respected Stanford University radio astronomer, has proposed it would be a fine gesture for a passing extraterrestrial to have seeded our then sterile planet billions of years ago with the first microorganisms that would later lead to the evolution of intelligent life. A less glamorous version of this conception of the origin of life is widely known as the gold garbage theory, according to Dr. Thomas Gold of the Center for Radiophysics and Space Research at Cornell University. Life might have spread from a pile of waste products accidentally dumped on a barren Earth long ago. A.G. Carnish Smith, a well-known biochemist at the University of Glasgow in Great Britain, suggests our original ancestors might have had alien biochemistries and had presented some with not yet conclusive evidence to support this possibility. But the best known of Earth-seeding ideas have come from two of the world's most eminent molecular biologists, Francis Crick at Cambridge, England, and Leslie Orgel at the Salk University in San Diego, California. According to their theory, first presented in 1971 at the joint Soviet-American Buryurakan CTI conference, organisms may have been directly transmitted to Earth by intelligent space beings deliberately. This directed panspermia, as they call it, could be accomplished simply by sending out unmanned space probes bearing a ton or so of assorted microorganisms capable of infecting a sterile host planet. Crick and Orgel cite as evidence the inordinately large role of the element molybdenum in terrestrial biochemistry, particularly because it is such a rare substance. Chromium and nickel, which are 10 and 100 times more abundant in the environment, respectively, are relatively unimportant in biochemistry. The theory has been debated extensively in literature without conclusion. So the idea is they came here in ancient times, and they messed with us.
Well, it makes sense, except for them
See,
liking the more primitive ape-like humans.
I think it fits in line with a lot of the Nephilim stuff too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, you have this idea of things that came from above, that interbred with man, that created a new species on the earth.
Yeah, it's just a technical version of that story.
It really is. It really is. It's more fanciful. I don't even know if it's more fanciful than the apocryphal account.
You know, my problem with it always is why? Why would they want to do that?
To experiment, to have slaves.
I mean, think about it. I mean,
For
look at
funsies.
your pets. You think you look at your pet and think, you know what? I'm going to interbreed with that because I want to advance my cat. You know what I mean? That's
I
the
think
thing.
they
I think
probably
of when-
saw an evolutionary potential, and they might have wanted to kind of speed things up and watch from orbit, maybe,
No, maybe you're right, Mecca.
or from another dimension. I mean, we might be a very, very long. You know, we might be a very long game experiment.
That's a distinct possibility.
Or
Yeah.
a bet.
Or a bet. See, that's what I'm looking at more of a bet. Just because.
Wouldn't that be funny?
Hmm.
Not really, but maybe. I'm not sure. I'm sure it'd be funny. But bring us
Yeah.
only halfway. Be annoying, not really funny. Annoying.
It states here, the early primates may have been set on a path of socio-cultural development because of alien intervention, as portrayed in popular production, 2001: A Space Odyssey. But there is no need to resort to fiction. Human folklore is replete with tales of interactions with strange beings from the skies. Among the lesser-known myths is that of the Eskimos. Eskimo legend tells of being transported to frozen Northlands in giant metal birds. According to Powell's and Berger, attention has been drawn to curious cultural parallels between various archaeological sites located in Greenland, Siberia, and Ceylon, but apparently the claim cannot be authenticated. One case which most nearly meets Sagan's three stringent criteria is the ancient Sumerian civilization. Sumerians were profoundly affected by the Apkallu, possible representatives of an advanced non-human amphibious extraterrestrial society, who taught them laws, science, and agriculture. No attempt was made by the aliens to conceal their nature. However, their first requirement, that there be a contemporary written account, is partially lacking. The only description that has survived appears in the Babylonian Gilgamesh epic, circa 2000 BC, one of the oldest existing written texts in the world today. Its secondhand reports are just not good enough. Sumerian legend is interesting because the creatures are always spoken of as beings endowed with reason and personages, but never as gods. Were it not for the unusual subject matter, the account would doubtlessly be considered an ordinary historical event, as there are no mystical or supernatural overtones in the writing. Most other legends don't appear to represent a radical alteration of any culture. The 3,500-year-old Egyptian Bible, called the Book of the Dead, speaks of those who with their knowledge reach the vault of the sky, and mentions those who live among the stars. Although the work purports to describe the life of Thoth, a god from the sky alleged to have given the people of the Nile the beginnings of science, literature, and medicine, the Book of the Dead is laced with mythological serpents, devils, and demons. In India, the Mahabharata is one of two beloved epic poems. The 24-volume work, written several thousand years ago, is a history of Indian religion and mythology. The poem speaks of Brahmanas, life and death of gods. In another section, two legendary characters battle each other with incredible weaponry that causes the winds to blow. Meteors lashing down from a firmament. Thick gloom. The sun no longer needed to see. Clouds roared. Elephants and other creatures of the land, scorched by the energy of that weapon, ran in fright. The very waters heated, and the creatures residing in that element seemed to burn. The forms of the slain could not be distinguished. Dogon of Mali in Africa worship a pyramid with a square flat top, upon which it is said the sky gods landed during their visits in ancient times. Such beings supposedly taught the natives the essentials of surveying and agricultural techniques. They're always referred to as gods. The tale, however, appears to be purely allegorical. About the time the Toltec and Mayan cultures were beginning to intermingle, 900 AD, there arose the legend of Quetzalcoatl, a bearded, light-skinned man who flew down from the sky to teach men law, astronomy, math, art, and the cultivation of corn and cotton. The feathered serpent was a symbol. The pyramid built in his honor is the largest in the world. Its volume nearly 30 times greater than the largest Egyptian structure. When Quetzalcoatl's mission to Earth was completed, he returned to the morning star, promising to return someday. The Mayans themselves are also fascinated because of the extreme accuracy of the calendar system. Furthermore, units of time in the Mayan system included Alotun, a period of roughly 63 million years. One inscription describes the events that occurred in 900 years ago, and another makes mention of a date 400 million years in the past. But without more, unfortunately, a long-time sense alone cannot be considered. Those who wish to find evidence for extraterrestrials, the Christian Bible is chock full of marvelous possibilities. The prophet Elijah, for instance, was protected by a fire that came down from heaven and destroyed 100 soldiers and their captains. Soon thereafter, he was abducted by a fiery chariot, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. Similarly, Enoch is reportedly shanghaied by God, although his tour of the seven heavens and subsequent return to Earth is published in the book of the Secrets of Enoch. Jacob wrestles with an angel until dawn and finally overpowers him. After forcing the angel to bless him, Jacob releases it, exclaiming in relief, "I have seen a heavenly being face to face, yet my life has been spared." Daniel encountered a being on a throne like flames of fire. In Revelation 4:1-6, St. John observed a door standing open in heaven, and then a throne from which proceeded flashes of lightning, rumblings, and peals of thunder. And before the throne was like a sea of glass unto crystal. Seated on the throne is a humanoid surrounded by 24 others, the elders. The list of biblical tales is virtually endless. The God to whom Moses frequently speaks appears to lack the strength of resolve we might expect from an omniscient deity. For example, when God is about to destroy Moses' people, the prophet manages to talk the Lord out of it. Furthermore, Moses communicates with a being upon demand in a specifically constructed tent. As Moses entered the tent, the column of cloud would come down and stand at the entrance while the Lord spoke with Moses. And God seems strangely concerned with promulgating an ethical rule that prohibits maltreatment of foreign-looking humanoids. When an alien resides in your land, do not molest him. Dr. Ivanislav Zaitsev and Alexander Kuznetsov have theorized that both Jesus Christ and the biblical angels might have been ETs. It's interesting to note the birth of John the Baptist and Jesus were announced to their respective mothers by angels long before they themselves knew they were pregnant. Both mothers were barren or a virgin at the time. Then we have the problem of Genesis plurals. There are many of them. Two are especially concerned here. The first is as follows. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." The fact that the plurals us and our are used gives rise to the speculation that many gods are involved, that is, extraterrestrials. It is generally accepted that these particular plurals are veiled references to the existence of more than one person in God, i.e., the Trinity. The second Genesis plural is rather harder to interpret. And it came to pass, the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, they bore children unto them. According to God, or extraterrestrials, one common explanation is they are the descendants of Seth and Enos. Ronald Story has suggested they were divine beings who belonged to the heavenly court. The issue remains unresolved. One of the most controversial contact events in the Bible may be found in the book of Ezekiel. To pick one passage of many, Now it came to pass in the 13th year, in the 4th month, in the 5th day of that month, when I was in the midst of the captives by the river Chobar, the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. And I saw and beheld a whirlwind come out of the north, and a great cloud, and a fire enfolding it, and a brightness was about it. And out of the midst thereof was the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. There was the likeness of a man in them. Everyone had 4 faces, and everyone 4 wings. Their feet were straight feet, and the soles of their foot sparkled like the appearance of glowing brass. And they had hands of a man under their wings on their 4 sides, and they had faces and wings on the 4 sides, and the wings of one were joined to the wings of another. After this landing, Ezekiel continues, there was a division running to and fro in the midst of the living creature, a bright fire and lightning going forth from the fire, and the living creatures ran and returned like flashes of lightning. Now, as I beheld, there appeared upon the earth by the living creatures 1 wheel with 4 faces, a wheel within a wheel. When they went by their 4 parts, and they turned not when they went. And over the heads of the living creatures the likeness of the firmament, and the appearance of crystal, terrible to behold, and stretched out over their heads above. And I heard the noise of their wings, like the noise of many waters. And when they stood, their wings were let down. And when a voice came from above the firmament that was over their heads, they stood up and let down their wings. And above the firmament was the likeness of a throne, and the appearance of the sapphire stone, and upon the throne was the appearance of a man above upon it. According to the late Joseph Blumrich, former chief of systems, layout branch at the Marshall Space Flight Center of NASA, Ezekiel was confronted with an Earth exclusion module manned by an alien pilot. In Spaceships of Ezekiel, Blumrich presents detailed engineering analysis of a plug-nozzled planetary landing vehicle that has been seriously considered by astronautical designers at NASA and elsewhere. Its wings are like helicopter blades affixed to 4 columns supported by this rocket mechanism. The aerospace engineer concludes this design will be optimal for required missions, which are Earth to orbit and short surface-to-surface comms. Here's a depiction here. Of what this spacecraft would look like, so I'm going to share this with you. 1979.
Engines disengaged.
I'm looking for a triangle ship. No,
To cone. Like a top,
a Christmas ornament.
an upside down tree.
We'll notice it has the 4 propellers like a drone.
It looks like an acorn.
That does.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Pineal gland.
This is an example of the depiction of the traditional interpretation. The spacecraft begins its flight to Earth with a separation from a mothership at an altitude of probably 220 nautical miles. During the flight through the atmosphere, its speed was reduced by aerodynamic drag until eventually at low altitude, a brief firing of the rocket engine reduced the speed enough so the spacecraft could use its helicopter for the rest of the descent. The last phase of the flight, which begins with a brief firing of the rocket engine, was witnessed and described by Ezekiel. Later, he observed the spacecraft as it hovers a few feet above the ground in search of a suitable landing site. The brief bursts of control rockets occur in a sequence seen as irregular by Ezekiel, who construes them as lightning flickering in the space that separates the living being. This diverts his attention from the fascinating beings in the area between them, and thus he now sees the radiator of the reactor glowing like smoldering coals. The spacecraft has landed. Wheels, which were housed in the lower portions of the helicopter unit during the flight, have now been deployed. The straight legs with their round feet no longer touch the ground. Wheels. Great archaeologist Heinrich Schleichelmann discovered the ancient city of Troy by accepting the Homeric epics literally. Blumrich has attempted to take Ezekiel at his word and try to reinterpret what the holy Hebrew prophets saw in terms of reasonable modern technology. Certainly, it is doubtful that Ezekiel, a man of the 5th century BC, could have recognized the forms or function of a bona fide spacecraft had he seen one. Unfortunately, most biblical reconstructions, such as the above, fall short of the 3 stringent requirements demanded by Sagan. Although the events described in the Bible clearly had an enormous effect on many cultures, the translated and retranslated record of whatever did happen 2,000 years ago is now a hopelessly confused jumble of conflicting testimony. 2 accounts of creation, Genesis, for instance, explicitly contradict each other. Besides the incorrectness of the astronomy and celestial mechanics in most biblical and other tales, The evidence here also fails because any hypothetical extraterrestrials apparently took great pains to generate a god myth and conceal their exogenous nature. Unlike the Sumerian legends discussed earlier, the Bible is loaded with spiritual, mystical overtones, which render virtually impossible the conclusive extraction of any historical visitation events that may be hidden there. It is interesting that oral tradition mentions a dark brother of the star Sirius. In modern times, it was discovered that the dark star possessed a dark companion star, a fact unknown till a little over a century ago. Nevertheless, this can hardly be viewed as compelling evidence of extraterrestrial visitation, because it is a trivial point which could easily have been adopted at random by the Dogon. It is notable until about the 6th century AD, the Church did not accept the spiritual nature of angels, but considered them to be physical beings without wings. So yeah, to recap very quickly, we're talking about Ezekiel now and the wheels within wheels, the beings with 4 faces. This contact event that might have come from the Bible here. Its similarity to the Vimanas of Mahabharata, and how these beings have very well enacted their own agenda within our historical time frame. I, for one, think it's a real possibility, folks.
Sure.
I think it's
I think we're
absolutely.
genetically engineered. Why not?
Yeah, I don't see any reason to doubt it.
It would explain the need for religion.
People need faith. And have something to look forward to.
And a bunch of rules.
Well, you know, that's usually what comes along because you got some asshole that heads it up. Isn't it? Head of a church or something like that.
Yep, everybody wants
Also,
power.
Yeah, but also, you know, it keeps everybody from killing each other.
Sometimes it causes people to kill each other. It's weird like that.
Too. But I mean, you know, like the 10 Commandments. I think that's basically keep anybody from killing each other. Just doing the right thing. Doing the, you know, you don't want to steal. You don't want to kill. You don't want to, you know, base everything about, you know, being jealous of other people, coveting. You don't want to be a pig.
I want to covet. I covet everything. I want to
Right.
covet. I'm a coveter.
I think we all are to a certain extent. I mean, if we didn't covet, we wouldn't go to work. Period.
It's the basis for a good economy. Learn from Carlin.
Right.
It's like, do not covet thy neighbor's goods. No, fuck that. That's everything. You need that.
Motivate you. Yeah. I mean, yeah. What they, you know, I mean, like covet, like till you're just greedy, sick about it. I think is probably what that.
That's avarice. That's different.
I just think that, like I said, everybody covets to a certain extent, right down to wanting a significant other. You know what you like, so you covet that.
Covet it. Covet it all. I want it all. I want my neighbor's green lawn.
Are you obsessing about your neighbor's green lawn, Pete?
It's so fucking green.
Tell them to stop all that greenery. It's upsetting you. You're offended. Tell them it's racist to have such a green lawn like that.
Okay, Karen. Well, stop being offended by everything.
Right? Oh, shit.
It used to be a funny joke, but I am sick of those people.
Yeah, they get pretty tiring.
And quick.
How many of them might be aliens in disguise?
The Karens.
Probably a few.
Maybe that's the
Or
problem.
they're blanked out bodies waiting to be taken.
We don't like them
Pod
aliens.
people. Pod people.
Mm-hmm. Precisely.
So from time to time,
I'm
particular
just thinking
artifacts.
it's important to see if they're coming back.
And from time to time, particular artifacts are turned up, and often touted as remains of ancient. At best, most of the finds are unauthenticated, unverifiable, and frequently. Perhaps the oldest known artifact is that of the Salzburg Cube. This object was found in 1885 in a tertiary period cold stream scene by Dr. Gurit. It measures 67 by 67 by 47 millimeters, with a deep groove running around the middle, weighing about 785 grams. It was said to resemble in composition a hard nickel carbon steel. However, the mere steel should not have been able to survive 12 to 70 million years of the successive acid-alkaline reactions found in the decaying vegetation in the coal bed. The cube reposed in the Salzburg Museum in Austria until 1910, when it was apparently lost. So it was a lost cube. What could it be? The wolf's egg iron, it's also known as.
Is it a TARDIS?
Looks like a turtle shell.
No.
Here's a picture.
Now, Salzburg in Austria is where they filmed The Sound of Music, I believe.
The hills are alive.
Yeah, that was
That's the
beautiful.
one, right?
Yeah.
The hills are alive.
Yeah, it's one of my kind of guilty pleasure movies.
Sure.
Thank you.
It started out 50,000 octaves high. That was great.
The hills are alive.
I like the other version better. That was nice. Actually hear your voice.
So this thing just looks like, I don't even know what it looks like.
Yeah, what is that?
This was found buried in a coal seam.
Okay. What's it supposed to be made out of?
It's supposed to be made of steel.
Steel. Huh? It's a petrified vagina.
That's what I was thinking about. I want to say.
Oh, that looks awful. Tina.
Sorry.
We're all thinking
my
it. You
vagina
just
is
said
probably
it.
petrified by now. I mean, technically. But that's the first thing that came to mind. Sorry. That's a male point of view. Jesse thought the same thing.
It looks like an axe head that they broke the axe part off of.
You think? I didn't see the other side of it.
It looks like it doesn't have a cutting blade to it. It looks like it's just busted up.
And then what did they?
It was found in a mine.
guessing-
Maybe they were chopping something up, trying to hammer something up.
What do they think it may be, Pete? Is it some type of tool?
I don't know. It was originally identified as being of meteoric origin.
What does that mean then? Nothing.
It means we don't know.
Yeah.
It seems most likely this is a piece of cast iron used as a ballast in mining machinery, deposited during mining efforts before it was found, apparently within the seam. So that's what we're to believe.
Okay.
But it's claimed by some as an out-of-place artifact, and is often stated as, in fact, in parallel in the literature, that disappeared without a trace in 1910 from the Salzburg Museum. In fact, it is at the Heimathus Museum in Vollenbruck, Austria, where the photo we just looked at was taken. It's also been erroneously described as a perfectly machined steel cube. The object was analyzed rather in 1966 and 67 by the Vienna Natural Historisches Museum using electron beam microanalysis, which found no trace of nickel, chromium, or cobalt in the iron, suggesting it was not a meteoric origin. While the lack of sulfur indicated that it is not a pyrite. Because of its low magnesium content, Dr. Glero Karaut of the museum and Dr. Rudolf Grill of the Federated Geological Office in Vienna thought it might be cast iron. Grill suggested that similar rough lumps had been used with pallets in early mining machinery. The cast is currently kept in the I can't pronounce that word, the museum in Austria, where the original object was also exhibited from 1950 to 1958.
Is the Mecca, maybe you know this one. Is the pyrite? Is that the one that has all the different colors in it?
Pyrite is actually red or blue.
Yeah, the one with all the different colors is
What's that one called? You know what I'm talking about?
Pyrite is fool's gold.
Yeah, but there's one of them that you know the one I'm talking about, Mecca, probably.
no
I'm thinking of Peter
No,
site.
sorry.
the color change ones.
Well, that would be just like a regular stone, like a not an amethyst, but shit, I'm forgetting my stones right now.
This is pyrite.
I'm just stoned.
Yeah, pyrite I know is a metallic.
It's cool looking.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Cubes.
Cubes.
Cubes, man. So how do I get my hands on some of that, and what do I use it for?
Oh. Jewelry.
I want to make jewelry.
Yeah, you get down there, you start making jewelry. Jewelry by Jesse.
Jewelry by Jesse.
I'm
Jesse's
good.
Jewels. Jesse's jewels.
You meet a lot of women.
Yeah,
You
but I
would,
also
Jesse.
need to get my hands on, like, you know, gems.
That is the gem, the pyrite.
Yeah, you can get gems are easy.
Yeah, for money.
Yeah.
Yeah, you buy the gem, then you make the jewelry, then you sell the jewelry with the gem in it.
But these emeralds ain't cheap, and I don't know how much or to who I'm going to sell my homemade emerald jewelry to.
Why are you starting out with emeralds? Why did you do something that's
I
like
don't want to do that shit.
Some semi-precious stone. Not everybody likes emeralds.
I don't know what to tell you.
you gonna go with emeralds, the most expensive fucking stone out there?
Stop arguing with us, Jesse. Just start making the damn jewels.
I don't know what makes you think I know anything about jewelry making.
Take a class.
Take a class, damn it. Learn on YouTube.
I'm gonna be taking a class. I'm taking a nap later.
Oh goodness.
Jewelry making. What am I?
That's funny.
Nothing wrong with jewelry making.
If you're a chick,
No, it's not true at all.
I beg to differ.
No, really. It's you know, artist.
Oh, it's men are jewelers.
It's not my bag.
True, Mecca. Every place I've ever walked in, you know, watch battery change out or anything like, it's always been a man.
Get in and start cutting them stones.
I really don't want to work in the mall either.
You don't have to work in the damn mall. That's just cheap.
Why won't one of you do this?
Because we want you to
We
do
nominated you.
it. Yeah.
Why? What reason? What would lead you to
Just for jewelry
believe?
making.
Shits and giggles.
Yeah.
You gotta start wearing tons of jewelry too. You gotta look like Mr. T.
Like Mr. T?
Yeah.
Yeah, wear V-neck shirts.
You should get yourself a big piece of jewelry.
Yeah.
Gold chains, rather. Oh, I can
Right.
think.
Get deep V-neck shirts.
Get a giant Jesus chain.
Oh, you guys don't know nothing,
What the hell
man.
is a Jesus chain?
Growing up in the 80s and these Italian dudes with these just thick, hairy chests and their gold chains just buried in there somewhere. That's what the 80s were all about with Italian dudes.
Yep.
The hairier the chest, the prouder they were of their Italian horns.
The more you know. The more you didn't want to know.
Pretty much. Pretty much. Well said.
So, like I said, these various artifacts show up from time to time. Bullet holes in prehistoric bison, remains of screws, nails, and spark plugs, the Koso artifact, have been unearthed, as well as handprints and footprints, molded in solidified sandstone, instruments, small gem statuettes, and peculiar coins. A diffraction grating etched on a polished copper mirror was found in an early Egyptian tomb. About 700 strange granite discs were rumored recovered from caves in the mountains of Puyanka, Arela Ula, in China in 1938. These discs bore engraved symbols, telling of creatures landing a craft and meeting the local natives. However, lack of corroborating artifacts is suspicious. The Baghdad batteries are small ovoid jars capable of producing a weak current when filled with vinegar. About a dozen such objects turned up during heavy construction work in the capital of Iraq. Ronald's story has suggested they might have been used for primitive electroplating of silver onto copper, certainly a far cry from advanced extraterrestrial technology. Another technological gift from the gods appears in the Bible. In Exodus 25, God tells Moses how to erect the Ark of the Covenant, which serves as a transceiver to heaven. This construction details the Ark are such that when completed, Moses should have a giant capacitor charged to 100 volts or so. When it is true that the Ark of Arcadia wood with gold leaf trimmings can hardly be considered advanced technology, the ability of ovens, cars, and other metallic objects to audibly receive modulated radio broadcasts on rare occasions is a documented fact. If laboratory tests with models of the Ark can demonstrate this ability, a good case can be made in favor of alien influence. The ET would simply have been ordering the manufacture of the simplest radio device manageable with the limited tools available to humans millennia ago. Another biblical tale often attributed to extraterrestrial activities is the nuclear explosion that destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah around 2000 BC, as related in Genesis 19:24-28. The Lord poured down on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from out of heaven. Later that morning, there was smoke rising from the earth as though from a furnace. But there are excellent grounds for believing the cataclysm was a result of a great earthquake, followed by explosions of natural gas. Excavations of the site in 1928 revealed large burned-out regions of oil, sulfur, and asphalt overlaying a subterranean salt dome 50 meters thick. There was clear geological evidence
50 meters is a lot.
that a great rupture in the strata took place centuries ago. There are countless other artifacts which could have been attributed to space visitors, including the construction of the pyramids and mummification technology, the Baalbek terraces as launching platforms, the rust-proof iron pillar in India, the Nazca Desert Spaceport in Peru, the subterranean tunnels with gold tablets of Juan Marquez in Ecuador, the giant cement cylinders of New Caledonia, the peculiar statues of Easter Island, and the catastrophic result of a landing attempt in Tunguska, Siberia in 1908. Unfortunately, more prosaic explanations exist in all cases. I'm curious, I haven't heard about these golden tablets
Which ones, Pete?
in Ecuador.
F4? What are they calling them? Any special name?
No, I don't know. Hold on. In a 1969 exposition
Frameshift drive charging.
to the cave is presented in Pino Torello's 1970 book Beyond the Andes. The cave was later popularized by Eric von Daniken's 1973 book The Gold of the Gods, in which he wrote that Juan Marquez had claimed to have explored Cueva de los Teos in 1969 and discovered mounds of gold, unusual sculptures, and a metallic library. These items were said to be located within artificial tunnels and have been created by a lost civilization with help from extraterrestrial beings. Von Daniken had previously claimed in the book Chariot of the Gods that extraterrestrials were involved in ancient civilizations. So yeah. I'm not one for crawling around in caves. It's not one thing I would ever like to do.
Me either.
Oof, no. I mean,
I just don't want to get
claustrophobic.
trapped in one.
Yeah, I'm claustrophobic, and God, if one caves in, I'm like, yeah, no. Peru's got some underground, like, caves too, right? I think so.
Everywhere's got underground caves.
I mean, like with links, like, to aliens too.
Well, some people believe that. Some people do believe that.
Oh, I think it was like Destination Unknown or whatever. With one of the Josh Gage series. I think it was him in Peru. I remember it was a really good episode too. Like lights would come out and just disappear, like moving disappear, because they're traveling so fast. They'd emerge out of the
Lights in the sky.
They would emerge from the caves from underground. They'd pop up and then fly away. Disappear.
Flying saucers and their progeny are largely a product of the space age. Since we now possess rudimentary spaceflight capabilities, people ask, not aliens as well? This kind of reasoning has given added plausibility to reports that Earth is now being regularly visited by ETs possessing high-performance aerial vehicles with remarkable maneuverability. Mach 10 speeds with no sonic booms, right-angle turns, vertical takeoffs and landings, etc. This is not to suggest the problems of UFOs is a movement. Humanity has been seeing strange lights in the sky for thousands of years. In 213 BC, in Hadrian, an altar was seen in the sky, followed by the appearance of a humanoid in flowing white robes. There were at least a dozen similar sightings during the next 200 years. In 100 BC, Pliny observed a burning shield scattering sparks as it ran across the sky at sunset from east to west. This phenomenon persisted into later times. In Nuremberg in 1561, there reportedly was a mass sighting of fireballs and discs in the neighborhood of the rising sun. The great astronomer Edmund Halley in 1716 apparently saw an object that was illuminated in the night sky so brightly it could serve as a reading light for several hours. It's easy to find thousands of flying saucer sightings, especially if we're willing to suspend our scholarly skepticism, uncritically accept all such accounts as being factual depictions of aliens busting our planet. Most scientists would agree there are many peculiar things to be seen in the heavens. It is modern interpretation, by and large, with which they take issue. A recent poll of the members of the American Institute for Aeronautical and Astronautical Engineers turned up sightings from only 2% of the samples, 1,175 scientists. The popular polls yielded different results. A 1966 poll of pollster Gallup found more than 5 million Americans claimed to have seen what they believed was a genuine UFO. By November 1973, that number had climbed to 15 million, a full 11% of the adult population. And for the first time, a majority of the American people believed that UFOs were real. The literature in this field is extremely varied in quality, and opinions tend to be highly polarized with little rational debate. Typical books written by uncritical believers include those by Leslie and Adamski, Edwards, Lorenzen, Standerson, Kehoe, and Holzer. In 1974, one of the UFOologists, Ralph Blum, confidently predicted that by 1975, the government would release definitive proof that extraterrestrials are watching us. Slightly less credulous, perhaps, are Valet and Cohen, Hynek, Saunders and Harkin, Campbell and Emaker, who present facts somewhat more cautiously, while maintaining their devout belief in the mysterious. Finally, we have debunking books written by the hardened skeptics, such as Menzel, McCroskey, and Brokenstein, Corden, Class, and Story. Why is support for the extraterrestrial hypothesis that UFOs are crafts piloted by aliens so widespread today? Part of the explanation must be the renewed interest in the subject of life on other planets. UFOologist B.L. Trench listed nearly 20 worldwide UFO investigative organizations. His favorite, Contact, had branch offices in 27 counties in 1970.
Target shields offline.
Countries, rather. And the television viewing public eats it up. When the series The Invaders was brought out about a decade ago, The American Broadcasting Company show sold the show to 15 foreign networks as well. There's much more to the phenomenon than current fascination with xenological topics. Man has always had religion. It is said both to preserve moral values and to impart a measure of predictability and uniformity to the environment. In a world where morality seems as fluid as the wind, where a total annihilation may only be 15 minutes away, traditional religions have been unable to supply the answers to many hard questions. It's this uneasiness about the future that has given rise to what Donald Story appropriately labels the new mythology. The ancient astronauts spawned by Eric von Daniken's writings and the contactee cults such as the Ethereal Society, the Two, and Gabriel Green's Amalgamated Flying Saucer Clubs of America are extreme examples of a belief pattern sufficing on an entire culture. Many people have begun to view extraterrestrial visitors not merely as friendly, but as technological angels who will guide us successfully through the uncertain years ahead. Just as biblical angels were the mythical beings proper to the age of early Christianity, UFOs and their benevolent alien occupants are the mythical beings proper to the space age. The famous psychiatrist Dr. Carl Gustav Jung did not find it all surprising that scientific instead of religious imagery would be used by many to assimilate the accelerated pace of modern civilization. Flying saucers serve as a partial substitute for God. A related idea is the stasis inconsistency theory on UFO sightings proposed by Donald I. Warren, a University of Michigan sociologist. In this theory, the belief in flying saucers is linked to the degree in which a person feels alienated from society. Persons who perceive their social status as measured by, say, income, as different from their abilities or true worth, example, their education or ethnicity, have been found more likely to report UFOs than those who do not have this internal conflict. Such inconsistencies force the individual to withdraw from society to a certain extent. The resulting void is often filled by belief in extraterrestrial benefactors. Another modern dilemma is the virtually universal distrust of governments and politicians, and a nostalgic yearning for the great leaders of the past. There's much evidence that the known propensity of authorities to classify and conceal has done little to reassure the public that no pertinent information on flying saucers is being withheld from them. For example, a poll taken in 1971 by the engineering periodical Industrial Research showed that 76% of the respondents believed the government was hiding some of the UFO facts. So the paranoia is self-reinforcing. The conviction that aliens are communicating to Earth has been dampened by official proclamations to the contrary. Finally, there's the problem of boredom in daily life. With more leisure time on our hands than ever before, we seek amusement and fun. And certainly, the discovery of beings from another world would be both amusing and exciting dramatic distractions from routine. As Story points out with tongue-in-cheek, who knows, they might even let us ride on one of their spaceships. Carl Sagan believes that flying saucers is a kind of psychological projected test, a cosmic Rorschach, by which humans project their hopes, frailties, and self-perceptions on alien beings. The idea of extraterrestrial visitation resonates with the spirit of the times in which we live.
Cargo scoop retracted.
So, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that people were looking for a means to kind of replace the absence of spirituality in their lives? Do you think that could lend a lot to the UFO phenomenon here?
Sure. If you don't believe in God, I'm telling you, people have to have faith in something. I think it's
Target shields
in our
offline.
genetic makeup. You gotta.
Don't get him started. He's gonna start saying you gotta have faith.
I'm serious though,
Well, no, I think it helps
you-
to feel like there's a meaning to things.
Some importance to us. We're not just another ant in the,
Mm-hmm.
universe.
Well, see, I like the more spiritual, like the spirituality aspect.
Sure.
The spirituality aspect of extraterrestrials?
Of everything. Yeah.
I believe it's possible aliens can be far spiritual.
Yeah. Or maybe they're just cold. That's what I envision as. I want to be just as much as I want to be
Well, you're not going to have the same level of communication. I mean, humans use so many metaphors.
Target shields offline.
So, what type? Like, this is why Star Trek is so important. like the Darmok episode of how aliens communicate with each other. And like they communicate only in references to events that have happened. And that's so fascinating. Like, the episode's not nearly as entertaining as a lot of Star Trek has been, but as like a piece on the social communication sort of study that it brings into it, it really kind of makes you think about what might be out there, what aliens would think about, looking at humans, and are they more advanced than us, and do they have like a compassion aspect, or is that only a human trait? Are they more robotic? Are they more
That's what I would envision.
bird-like almost, or are they more, literal in nature?
Yeah, cat-like.
Mm-hmm.
The Lyrans are the cat aliens.
Yeah.
The blue avians are the bird aliens. They're down at the South Pole.
The reptilians are underground.
That's right. And in Alpha Dakotas.
Sneaky aliens.
Scan detected.
I don't know much about the aroma of aliens. I don't imagine any alien smells particularly good.
I don't see them as cologne-wearing creatures. No, you always hear about the reptilians stinking.
Retracted.
Never heard about them stinking, but I mean, imagine if that a regular lizard smells.
That's it.
Yeah, and then like I guess a person or a person-sized reptile would really.
Lizards do stink, because I've had 3 iguanas. They are a distinct smell to them.
Target cargo dropped.
Look at this.
Hmm?
I think we lost Jesse.
Yeah, he said he's falling asleep, gonna drop out. Another hot day tomorrow.
Wow.
Oh. I missed the message.
Target shields offline.
Catch
Must
up.
have been totally zoned out.
I'm coloring another picture.
Totally zoned out.
Target
That's what it
destroyed.
said.
Seemed to be pretty well awake.
Well, I was zoned out.
You were. See, Jesse, there seemed to be. He was. Didn't cook tonight. Not true.
Yeah, sheepdoggy is a good question. People say they're spiritual. What's spirit? What is sheepdoggy?
Cargo scoop deployed.
Well, that's a good question. It really is. It could be anything. You get people that are neo-pagans or Wiccans, that believe in various pantheons of gods. You could have Christian mysticism, where people, are essentially Christian mystic. They could be spiritual people.
I would guess it's spiritual people or people that hold their faiths and beliefs is very important, You run across somebody that's real religious, they're going to tell you, have you heard the good news, or are you right with God, or,
Well, it's none of your business now, is
or
it?
like, right, or like scientists. To me, scientists, their spirituality is their work. So they immediately start telling you about some new thing they're working on. So that's how I think of spirituality. Whatever is important to that person. So important that, it takes up a good chunk of their life, and they want to share it with their friends and family.
I think anybody can have a focus on the spiritual without having personally, I'm fascinated by various forces of bad guy. But I don't ascribe to any particular one myself, So for me, it's just a fascination. I wouldn't call myself spiritual, but I probably spend more time researching religion than a normal person should.
Target shields offline.
So I don't know what you'd consider that. the unknown spirits. Well, look at the way the Gnostics do it. See, like, come on, like Praxis. But I think it's not as easy.
Target shields online.
That's just my perspective.
Warning. Temperature critical. Taking heat damage.
It's not even, you know, a matter of belief. It's just like, you know, kind of.
Target shields offline.
Your opinion.
Yeah. So yeah, the possibility of the aliens are nice. There's evidence for
You know,
I've seen plenty of that UFO-related phenomenon.
just like we mentioned several times that Bob Lazar's special, he's believable.
Cargo scope
Yeah.
deployed.
I mean, I thought he was very believable. I mean, you know, he didn't come off as sounding crazy at all, did he?
No, I think Bob Lazar comes across as 100% credible.
Yeah, and I mean, if you go by what he's saying, he's back engineering alien spacecraft, so.
This is true. This is very true.
You know, stuff like that really, you know, makes me believe in aliens.
I don't doubt that there's other life out there in some form. Like, it's just astronomically, like the chances that are, I mean, you're using the term astronomically here. There's so many planets. There's so many time. There's so much time that has spanned in the history of the galaxy, and even in the entire universe. Right there's so much time that has spanned to think that the only correct combination of getting some sort of evolved intelligent life was here and now in the past.
Only us.
Yeah, it's like it's so implausible to think that we're the only ones out there.
True. And you know, they say as time goes on, everything's spreading apart farther and farther in space. So you can't tell me there's not another planet similar to Earth. And it doesn't even have to be similar to Earth. I mean, it just may be another life form that likes, you know, a really hot place or a really cold place. I mean, look at the shit we got growing. You know, where the lava's pouring out from under the ocean. There's stuff living in that heat, you know? There's stuff living in the Arctic, you know? So, it wouldn't even have to be the same environment as Earth for life to be on it, so...
Well, no, I mean, that's how I would assume that life evolves in other places the way it evolves here on Earth, where, you know, you adapt to your surroundings and the environment that you're in. I mean, you might have life forms that have hard exoskeletons to live in more hot sort of temperatures. They might have lava storms. They might have meteor showers constantly. They might have, you know, something where they've evolved. You know, they might have different light sensitivity. They might live underwater and not be able to move around in an air environment.
They're not breathe oxygen,
They
yeah.
might have different dimensions where they can shift in and out of dimensions too. I mean, if they're advanced enough, but they might just come from another dimension.
May not be carbon-based, period.
Yeah, that's one of the big things with aliens. They can be so vastly different from us.
That was always the argument I remember hearing people talk about Star Wars because they were Star Trek because they said that all the aliens were always humanoid. Who cares?
Well, that's because of makeup and, Yeah, that's
Yeah, I know. I was like,
how much
okay,
can you do with a
who
human
cares? It's a good
accent?
series. No.
It's like Stargate, they just automatically go through the gate speaking English. I mean,
Oh
I
yeah,
know.
everybody they run into speaks English.
Yeah, of course. Fucking convenient.
Do they have any kind of a translator
Target
excuse in
shields
that?
online.
by the time they went through Stargate, I think that they developed something that would, I think, but
Didn't
I
he,
can't remember. I know because they had the other translator, they had Daniel Jackson there all the time. So.
well,
That was
even
approved in
the,
real life.
that's right. Least expected to be like that. That's probably why women liked him. That's innocent. Yeah, definitely possible. I was sort of hoping the next thing would be you know, after all the crazy shit going on now in the world, I hope the next thing would have been aliens.
Flight assist off.
Mm-hmm.
Well, buck up. The year's not over.
That's
Flight
true, man.
assist
2020
on.
blows.
5 more
Flight
months.
assist
So
off.
Yeah,
maybe,
5 more months.
yeah.
Don't plan for 2021 to be much better.
I don't say that, Pete.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ. I don't
I
know.
predict more of the same.
Please don't. I'm sick of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just had it. Completely had it.
That's neither here nor there. There are aliens roaming about among us. I think
Yeah.
we all know it. I think we're all tuned to it. I think we're all pretty keyed up on the idea.
If a ship landed and you had the opportunity to leave with them, would you?
No.
If you could take your whole family?
Scan detected.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't mind going for a ride in the spaceship, but I wouldn't want to leave for good. No. I guess it depends. You know, like a Superman situation.
A
Planet's
Superman
breaking up.
situation? Yeah, well, that's a
You know,
different story.
you know what I mean? Then and then you had to leave it, and then yeah, then probably you'd want to leave, but or die. You know, fiery death. Yeah, then leave. But other than that, no, I wouldn't want to go either. Would you go, Mecca?
To space?
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay.
In a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
With space.
Right. Yes, I'd want to go for a ride, but I don't think I'd want to stay permanently.
I mean, it depends on what's out there, to be honest.
Yeah.
Depends
Well,
on-
either then there's that. Yeah. Yeah. Then there's that. Be afraid they'd take me and use me for nefarious reasons. Oh, it's great. Come with us. And then as soon as you're off the planet, the truth is revealed. Guess what? You should have stayed.
Fuck now. Why don't you just drop them pants?
Get it over with.
Now you're our plaything.
Yeah.
Anywho,
Forever.
that brings us up to the end of the evening.
Oh, really?
Really.
Wow. That was fast.
Yeah, sometimes they go quick.
Yeah.
I do appreciate you all tuning in with us tonight. I appreciate you all being here with us night after night, day after day, as we delve into the world of the weird. And I want to thank you again for being here. I want to say thank you to my panel for joining us tonight. Thank you very much, ladies. And Jesse, who was here for a minute, had to go. Thank you as well. And as we do, I want to remind you to check out the description of this video. We will find links to the Teespring store, my Twitter, and my email. If you've got creepy stories to share and you want me to make a high strangeness video, state of fear video, rather, out of your creepy story. Patreon. Thank you, my Patreon supporters, both old and new. I really appreciate you guys. If you're in a position to become a Patreon supporter for just $1 a month, that's the only tier I have. $1 a month. That's a quarter a week. It's less than the price of a cup of coffee. And I hope you feel what we do here is worth a quarter a week. So thank you in advance if you're in a financial position to sign up for Patreon. Links to everybody else's channels are down below. Don't hesitate to subscribe. As we do, this has been the Creepy Little Book Live, and you've been listening to High Strangeness, the #1 late night paranormal podcast on YouTube. I've been your host, Pete, and with me tonight were James Omazuski, Mecha42, and Jesse Miller at the Crow's Nest. Until tomorrow night, peoples, stay creeped out.
Scan detected.
Pete, and with me tonight is Tina Tomaszewski, and you've tuned in to hear us talk about Tales of Valor. So we're going to get some interesting stories of heroism, of bravery, of valor, as the aforementioned title would explain.
Send Jesse a link, Pete.
Oh, absolutely right. I forgot to. No, you know what? I didn't forget to.
He said he needs it. Sorry.
Sorry, everybody.
That's okay, right? Hey, Mazeris.
I apologize. This is how it goes.
Hey, Red Monarch. Thought of Undul. Like the name. Mecca. Here's our Mecca. Yeah, make sure after tonight you guys hop over and watch Mecca stream Paper Mario. It's such a cute game. And when I get my Switch back from being repaired, I'm gonna get it too. Hey Transcendent, how you doing, sweetheart? Fishing Pro, my crazy ass Joseph, Jake, the Antediluvian Man.
Yes. Hello, everybody. One and all, good to see you. Thank you for tuning in with us tonight, being here with us night after night, day after day, as we delve into the world of the weird. And really weird tonight with tales of superhuman feats of people conquering insurmountable odds, despite the improbability, the impossibility of such. So we're going to get into that tonight, but this is the first segment of the show where I like to let a little time go by where people can get the notification that the show is going on. Give them a few minutes to tune in. Generally, we get started with the topic around the 10-minute mark. So until then, just some light banter. There we go. Everybody, Jesse Miller at the Crow's Nest. How do you do, Jesse Miller?
Well, it was silly, man. I kept hitting refresh, inbox. I had to close it and open a new tab, reopen my email, and then I had 2 links from you.
No, that's weird.
Yep.
It
That was
happens to me
technology.
too. Yeah, it happens to me too. Electronically, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong for me for some reason. Boomers, Joseph says, I know, Joseph, you're right.
What happened to the Birch stash?
I took it off.
Oh my god, I can't believe I didn't notice that.
That's the first thing I noticed. I'm like, wait a minute, where's the Birch stash?
Yeah.
I guess I've been sitting
Was
here
it too
doing
annoying?
stuff.
It was pretty annoying.
Oh, Pete.
It was
I
pretty annoying. I
understand.
took it off. I was, I was just like, fuck it, it's got to go.
Yeah.
And then he became 10 years younger. So handsome and beautiful. The fanciest of all men.
Thank you, Charlie.
She's
I love
so
her too.
funny. I know. We love Amy. Amy's great.
All right, let me grab water real quick.
Shit.
Oh, goodness gracious. So, yeah, like I said, it's good to see you all tonight. Oh, I got some action figures in my pocket.
Do you?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got the Flash. Killer Croc.
Rawr.
And Metallo. I was going to take them upstairs to my son, but I forgot they were in my pocket. Joseph Aldred for $1.99. Thank you, Joseph Aldred. In greater eons, even caterpillars may die. Well, that's a reference to not only Lovecraft, but my mustache.
Yeah. I'm sort of sad it's gone, to be honest with you. But I understand.
Facial hair is annoying. I don't know how Ginger does it.
Yeah.
It's irritating.
You just gotta love the look, and well, look at all the shit women go through to look good. So, you guys need a hairy face. That makes us even. You got to deal with a beard and a mustache if you keep it up correctly. I'm sure it'd be a pain in the butt. Yeah, Ginger definitely looks like a Viking. 100%. You're not late, Lane. You're right on time, buddy.
Yeah, you're not late at all. We're still in the first segment of the show where we're talking about absolutely nothing, leading into that 10-minute mark where we get into the topic. For those people, there's a lot of people who like to complain about that.
And we don't care.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't understand what the problem is. Like, if you don't like it that much, just forward the show 10 minutes, and there you go.
Out of curiosity, do you know, is it people with channels or without channels?
I don't check that shit. Who
You know what I
cares?
mean? I mean, if you knew, maybe you knew. So obviously, people that don't have channels wouldn't know how
That you wait
do.
for people to shuffle in just like it's a performance. Yes, it's a show. Get used to it.
And YouTube really doesn't send out notifications like they should. I don't know what's going on with them. So please share out the stream, like and subscribe, show Pete some love, and like Joseph gave us a nice example, there's always super chats. And you can also become a Patreon like myself. Anywho,
there is a lot of ground to cover tonight. A lot of interesting people.
A lot of ballsy bastards.
Yeah, real hardcore warriors. We'll be getting into this evening. Interesting stuff. As I was looking over these names earlier, just like from around the world. You have these stories of these just heroic, valiant people who overcame incredible odds to go down in history. That's what we're getting into tonight. So if you're just joining us, thank you for being here with us. We do hope you'll hit the like button and share out the stream. And if you're new, please consider subscribing. We do this every night around 11 p.m. It is a new topic every night, from the extraterrestrial to the otherworldly. I think we cover it all here. We get historical, we get metaphysical, we get philosophical, we do all of it. If it pertains to the paranormal, we've generally covered it here. I'm starting to run out of things to come up with. Yeah, really, it's becoming a problem.
so many shows, jeez. Some we've done twice, and some we've done part 2s and part 3s. Soon it'll be part 10s, right?
I don't know. You gotta figure, coast to coast AM does it.
But they had guests on too, though.
This is true.
You know, not just like a panel.
This is true. They do have guests, and they're able to take calls.
Yes, that eats. Yeah.
I could take calls. Call me.
Call me.
After you got my phone number. I'm waiting for you assholes to call me.
Okay,
Yeah,
Commander.
I would just
I'm
pause it
opening
and
up the
wait
fight
for
bay now.
My silent mode is on too.
SLF is online. Standing by.
For extra story for later.
So, Jess, did you want to kick this off? Or do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, like I like the story of Mad Jack Churchill because he's at the same time very reserved and polite and nice. On the other hand, he'll take down 40 Nazis with a sword. Just the way he rolls.
Is that the one that was a teacher? Yeah.
No, he wasn't a teacher. That's another guy.
Oh, okay.
But he was a like a extra, like a background actor.
Okay.
He also started learning how to play the bagpipes. He became an archer, and he was actually in international competition. But a little bit about him. Mad Jack Churchill, rare breed of war. Mad Jack Churchill is one of that rare breed for whom war is their element. Few others have led such a successful or fantastic military career. It is not recorded what the German commander said when he learned that one of his men had been spit by a broadhead arrow. It was May 1940, and the German officer's unit was attacking toward the village called La Empinette near Bethune, France. 5 of his soldiers took cover behind a farmyard wall sheltered from the fire of British rearguards covering the retreat of the British Expeditionary Force to the English Channel. Without warning, one German crumpled, the feather tip of an arrow sticking out of his chest. From a small farm building on their flank, rifle fire tore into the others. While he may have known that his enemy was soldiers from the Manchester Regiment, the German leader could not have known that they were led by the formidable Captain Jack Churchill. It was Churchill's arrow that skewered the luckless German, while his men's rifles accounted for the rest. However deadly, bows and arrows were surely anachronisms in modern war. They were formidable soldiers and always had been, precisely the sort of men Jack Churchill was cut to lead. But then so was the bowman. John Malcolm Thorpe, forming Churchill, was known as Jack Churchill to his friends, and later Mad Jack or Fighting Jack. He was a professional soldier, son of an old Oxfordshire family. Born in Hong Kong, Churchill graduated from the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst in 1926. He was commissioned in Manchester, a storied regiment with battle honors dating back to the 18th century. The regiment had been raised as the 63rd and 96th Regiments of Foot and had shed their blood for Britain all across the world. 42 battalions of Manchester served in World War I alone. Jack Churchill's younger brother Tom also became a Manchester's officer, and in time would rise into a major general, retiring in 1962. His younger brother, called Buster, opted for the Royal Navy's Fleet Air Arm and died for his country off Malta during the fierce fighting of Operation Pedestal. Jack Churchill's younger brother, that Churchill was a free spirit was obvious from the beginning of his service, even in an army rich in such men. For example, while serving in Burma before the outbreak of World War II, he attended a course in signals at Pune in India. It might appear odd to some that Churchill took his motorcycle all the way from Rangoon to Pune, but it did not seem at all remarkable, at least to Churchill, to return the 1,500 miles from Pune to Calcutta once he was to take a ship for Rangoon, riding his bike. Along the way, he lost the contest with a large and hostile water buffalo, but returned to his unit in time to serve in the Burma Rebellion of 1930 to 32. Unusual hazards and difficulties never meant much to Jack Churchill. On the same motorcycle, he had traveled the 500 miles through Burma from Mamo to Rangoon, a trip substantially complicated by an absence of roads. He therefore followed the railroad lines, crossing the dozens of watercourses by pushing the bike along the rail while he walked on the crossties. Everything in life was a challenge to him, including in challenges to which he rose was mastering the bagpipe, a peculiar attachment for an Englishman. His love affair with the pipe seemed to have originated in Mamio? It's hard to say, I don't know, Mamio, where he studied under the pipe major of the Cameron Highlanders. Back in England in 1932, Churchill kept on studying the pipes, but the peacetime army had begun to pale. Churchill was one of those unusual men designed to lead others in combat, and such men are often restless in time of peace, and perhaps, as his biographer commented, certain eccentricities brought on no doubt through frustration, such as piping the orderly officer to the guardroom at 3 o'clock in the morning, and studying the wrong preset campaign in preparation for his promotion exam, precluded any chance of promotion for the time being and made the break after the chat with the commanding officer inedible. When Churchill managed to get himself reprimanded for some hot water bottles and his bunk to sleep at night, a distinctly non-military piece of equipment, he circumvented this nicety of military protocol by substituting a piece of rubber tubing, which he filled from the nearest hot water tap. And then there was the day on which he appeared on parade carrying an umbrella, a mortal sin of any army. When asked by the battalion adjutant what he meant by such outlandish behavior, Churchill replied, "Because it's raining, sir." An answer not calculated to endear him to the frozen soul of any battalion adjutant. So he did like comforts, but he was a badass. Whatever the reason, after 10 years of service, Churchill resigned his commission and turned to commercial ventures. A job on the editorial staff of the Nairobi paper did not please him, so he turned to other tasks. Among other things, he worked as a model in magazine ads and a movie extra. He appeared in The Drum, a movie of fighting on the Northwest frontier in which he played the bagpipes. And because he had rowed on the River Isis, he won a cameo in A Yank at Oxford, in which he pulled the bow oar in the Oxford Shell with movie star Robert Taylor at the stroke. Meanwhile, he continued his piping, and in the summer of 1938, he placed second in the officers' class at the piping championships at Aldershot. It was an extraordinary feat, since he was the only Englishman among 70 or so competitors. During these years out of harness, Churchill practiced another skill as well, archery. He had first tried it only after returning to Britain from Burma. His expertise with the bow got him work in Sabu and The Thief of Baghdad. And with typical Mad Jack determination, he became so good with the bow that he shot for Britain at the World Championships in Oslo in 1939. Back in my red coat. By then, however, the long, ugly shadows of war were stretching across Europe, and as the German army smashed into Poland, Jack Churchill returned to the British Army and the Manchester Regiment, and he was shipped off to France. I was, he said later, back in my red coat, the country having got into a jam in my absence. He was obviously happy to be soldiering again. Patrolling a quiet stretch of France during the pre-Blitz Sitzkrieg of the late 1939 and early 1940 did not suit a man of Churchill's warlike temperament, and so, along with a bevy of other free spirits, including the fabulous Mike Calvert, he volunteered for the force assembling to help the Finnish army, then under attack of the Soviet Red Army. Yet that expedition was canceled before it could leave for Finland, and Churchill returned to the Manchesters in time to meet the German juggernaut as it crashed into Holland, Belgium, and France in May of 1940. By that time, Churchill was second in command of an infantry company in the regiment's 2nd Battalion. During the BEF's fighting retreat, Churchill remained aggressive, unwilling to give up a yard of ground while extracting the maximum cost from the enemy. He was especially fond of raids and counterattacks, leading small groups of picked soldiers against the advancing Germans. He presented a strange, almost medieval figure at the head of his men, carrying not only his war bow and arrows, but his sword as well. All right, Jack Churchill, World War II warrior. As befitted his love of things Scottish, Jack Churchill carried the basket-hilted claymore, technically a clay bag, the true claymore being an enormous two-handed sword. Later on, asked by a general who awarded him the decoration why he carried a sword in action, Churchill is said to have answered, "In my opinion, sir, any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed." The War Diary of 4th Infantry Brigade, to which Churchill's battalion belonged, commented on his extraordinary figure. One of the most reassuring sights of the embarkation from Dunkirk was the sight of Captain Churchill passing down the beach with his bow and arrows. His high example and his great work were great help to the 4th Infantry Brigade. During the retreat, Churchill took command of his company when his company commander was wounded, and it was during this fighting that he spitted his hapless German soldier with, as the chronicles of Henry V's wars would put it, a cloth-yard shaft. One of his brother officers, an old friend, saw him about that time chugging across the Flanders plain on a small motorcycle. His bow tied to the frame, arrows sticking out of one of the panniers on the back, a German officer's cap hanging on the headlight. "Ah," said Churchill, spotting his friend. "Hello, Clark, anything to drink?" Once Churchill had dismounted, his friend noticed dried blood smeared across one ear and asked Churchill about the injury. "German machine gun," said Churchill casually. His men had shouted at him to run, but he said he was simply too tired. He won his military cross during the retreat to the Channel when he hitched 6 trucks together to salvage a disabled British tank. Although in the end he could not save the tank, he did rescue a wounded British officer. This close call did not seem to impress Churchill in the least. Then afterward, he seemed to be one of those extraordinary men who thrive on danger and fear. Some fellow soldiers are said to have called him Mad Jack, and the nickname was not altogether undeserved. He then sort of became a commando. Churchill made it to Dunkirk, allegedly by bicycle, his bow and arrows hanging from the frame. From that terrible beach, he was lifted back to England, so was his Manchester friend, courtesy of the gallantry of the Royal Naval and the abortive civilian boats and ships, and it was there he heard of a new organization being formed. It sounded like precisely the sort of outfit Churchill was cut for. Requests for volunteers for this new duty were somewhat vague, but they promised aggressive service at least. And that was good enough for Churchill. Whatever a commando was, he would become one. His training in Scotland produced an unexpected dividend for Churchill. There he met Rosamund Denny, the daughter of a Scottish shipbuilding baronet. They were married in Dumbarton in the spring of 1941, a happy marriage that would produce 2 children and last until Churchill's death 55 years later. Churchill took to commando operations like a duck to water, including the icy water of the Scottish lochs. He was at home in the steep hills, in the rain and in the mud. He lived and breathed training, leading, driving, setting an example, praising excellence, and damning sloth and carelessness. His ad hoc lectures to his soldiers were couched in the plain language his men understood and liked. For instance, there's nothing worse than sitting on your bum bottom doing nothing just because the enemy happens to leave you alone for a moment while he has to go at the unit on your flank. Pitch and support your neighbor any way you can. Sword and pipes always at hand. There was also a bit of a downside to Jack Churchill. On those happy occasions when the commandos were not in the field at night, he was sometimes given to awaking everybody in the billet hotels at Largs, Scotland, shattering the night with pipe music. No piper could possibly understand why some of the world would rather sleep than listen to martial piping, however expert, and he was no exception. His comrades could only grit their teeth and hope that he would soon tire and think of something else quieter to do. The commando's eternal training ended on December 27, 1941, with a brilliantly successful assault on the German garrison at Vaxo, the Norwegian town on the Nordfjord. Churchill commanded 2 companies in the attack, charged with taking out a German shore battery on Malo Island, which lay on the fjord opposite Vaxo town. In vintage Mad Jack fashion, he stood in the lead, leading the craft as it forged in towards the shore, his pipe screaming the march of the cameramen. He then waded ashore at the head of his men, sword in hand, and charged ahead, as one account will put it, into the thick smoke, uttering warlike cries. Malloy and his battery quickly fell, and its battery quickly fell. Churchill and his men killed or took prisoner of the garrison, including 2 women who, as one account of the raid gently put it, might be described as camp followers. So they were hookers. Very nice. While heavy fighting continued for a while in Vaxo itself, the landing force would not be troubled by the cannon of Malloy. Jack Churchill signaled to the raid commander was terrorist Malloy battery and island captured, casualties slight, demolitions in progress. Churchill earning his 2nd military cross. The commandos had stung the Germans badly. In the time, the Norwegian garrisons would be heavily reinforced with troops critically required elsewhere. The German garrison at Vaxo ceased to exist, and the raiders took back with them some 100 prisoners and about 70 volunteers for the Free Norwegian forces. The expedition had also sunk about 15,000 tons of shipping and destroyed not only docks but the warehouses and the vital fish oil plants so important to German ammunition production and to dietary supplements for the German armed forces. And German troops nearly any coastline would not sleep quite well as they had before Vaxo. As the raiders prepared to leave Vauxhall and Malloy, a British demolition charge exploded so close to Churchill that it blew him up, in the words of one account. Another story said that the demolitions man thoughtlessly blew down a wall that he happened to be leaning against. Still another version, which sounds eminently Churchillian, relates that he was celebrating the raid's success with a bit of liberated Marcel wine when the charge went off and a chunk of the broken bottle slashed into his forehead. Whatever happened, Churchill had another wound, or at least another sort of wound, to show for his successful leadership at Malloy, and he himself joked later, "I had to touch it up from time to time with Rosamund's lipstick to keep the wounded hero story going." He also had his second military cross. Commando. Commanding number 2 Commando in the autumn of 1943, Jack Churchill won the Distinguished Service Order for an astonishing exploit during the Salerno landings. Ashore in command of number 2 Commando, also present were some of the Churchills, his brother Tom, and Captain Randolph, son of the Prime Minister. Churchill, they weren't related. Churchill led his men in heavy and confused fighting around the town of Marina. Their mission was to destroy German ability to place artillery fire on the western half of the Bay of Salerno. Churchill directed his final counterattack, which broke the last German attempts to destroy the Commando beachhead. During the ferocious Salerno fighting, number 2 Commando found itself fighting in the line of infantry, as did its American counterparts, the Rangers, a role for which neither Commandos nor Rangers were designed. Casualties were heavy, but the Commandos beat back every German attack. For Churchill, the high point of the fighting was the night attack on a town called Pigoletti, sometimes Pigolelli. He organized his men into 6 parallel columns. Since the heavy undergrowth ruled out any chance of a silent advance, he sent them charging through the darkness, shouting "Commando!" The yelling not only minimized the risks of Commandos shooting each other in the gloom, but also confused the German defenders, whom this fierce shouting seemed to come from all directions in the blackness of the night. The attack carried all of its objectives and bagged 136 prisoners. It's pretty ballsy. Take 24 guys and take 136 prisoners.
No kidding.
So then they weren't done though.
Oh, okay.
They took even more guys after that. Churchill himself was far in front of his troops, sword in hand, accompanied only by a corporal named Ruffel. He advanced into the town itself undiscovered by the enemy. He and Ruffel heard German soldiers digging in all around them into the gloom. The glow of a cigarette in the darkness told them the location of a German sentry post. What followed, even Churchill later admitted, was a bit Errol-Flynnish. The first German sentry post, manned by 2 men, was taken in silence. Jack Churchill, his sword blade gleaming in the night, appeared like a demon from the darkness, ordered hand and hawk, and got results. He gave 1 German prisoner to Ruffel and then slipped his revolver lanyard around the second sentry's neck and led him off to make rounds of the other guards. Each post, lulled into a sense of security by the voice of their captive comrade, surrendered to this fearsome apparition with the ferocious mustache and the naked sword. Altogether, Churchill and Corporal Ruffel collected 42 prisoners, complete with their personal weapons and a mortar they were manning the village with. Churchill and his claymore took the surrender of 10 men in a bunch around the mortar. He and his NCO then marched the whole lot back to the British lines. So that was all one clean sweep. So 136 and another 42. So that's 138, 178 people. Yeah, especially in the middle of the night with a sword.
Wait, do you play Robin Hood or something?
I know he's a SWAT.
Yeah, he's like the SWAT.
Yeah.
Pirate Prince and Prince Nancy.
Yeah.
But can you imagine having the balls to do all this knowing that
Well, that's what I've been keeping in the top six.
imagine being this guy Ruffle had to follow this guy. Is he gonna say no? Probably not. Alright, so what else happened here? As Churchill himself described the event, it all sounded rather routine. I always bring my prisoners back with their weapons and weighs them down. I just took their rifle bolts out and put them in a sack which one of the prisoners carried. That's smart. That's real smart.
I know.
They also carried the mortar and all the bombs they could carry, and also pulled a farm cart with 5 wounded in it. I maintain that as long as you tell a German loudly and clearly what to do. If you are senior to him, he will cry out Jalal and get on with it enthusiastically and efficiently, whatever the situation. That's why they make such marvelous soldiers. Guy likes to rub it in.
Right?
Churchill, well, he deserves it, I guess, you know. Churchill's next assignment took him to the Adriatic, where British units and Tito Yugoslav's partisan forces struck at the German garrisons along the Dalmatian coast. In January 1944, Churchill, leading No. 2 Commando, about 1,000 Yugoslav partisans and some anti-aircraft and machine gun attachments, became commandant of the island of Vis, the last Dalmatian island not in German hands. From Vis, the campaign against the German-held Adriatic Islands was carried on by sea, by the Royal Air Force, and by small boats of the Royal Navy. Ever ready for raids and excursions, Churchill sent some of his commandos along with the Navy as boarding parties to swarm over the side of any ships carrying supplies to the enemy. So they're doing some pirate shit.
Sounds like it.
Sounds like fun. Bagpipes and pirate shit.
There you go.
Small groups of commandos also landed by night to harass the German garrisons on the other Dalmatian islands. The commander of one such party, Lieutenant B.J. Barton, discovered that the German commandant on the island of Brac was much given to mistreatment of the island population. Barton, disguised as a Yugoslav shepherd, hid in his Sten gun in pieces inside a load of wood on a donkey, slipped into the German headquarters village, erased the commandant, and got away clean. Holy shit. Fucking assassination.
Right?
Sounds like they're trying to one-up each other.
No kid, they probably were.
A series of successful raids by commandos and partisans hurt the Germans. In a May 1944, a more ambitious attack by British and Yugoslav personnel was planned on the German-held Yugoslav island of Brac. It was here that Jack Churchill's amazing luck at last ran out. The operation required attacks on 3 separate hilltop positions, dug in, mutually supporting, protected by wires and mines, and covered by artillery. Several Allied forces would have to work in cooperation. One of these, a reinforced commando unit plus a large contingent of partisans, Jack Churchill would lead himself. This is extra ballsy. While partisan attacks on the main German position got nowhere, 43 Royal Marine Commando went to the attack of the vital hill called Point 622. Pushing ahead in clear moonlight through the wire and minefields, 43 commandos carried out the hilltop, but were forced back with heavy casualties. Churchill now sent 40 commandos, also Royal Marines, in against the hill and led them himself playing the pipes. The leading troop went in yelling, shooting from the hip, and overran the German positions on 622. But between casualties on the way up the hill and more casualties from the very heavy German fire on the top, Churchill quickly found himself isolated with only a handful of defenders around him. There were only 6 commandos on the hilltop, and 3 of those were wounded, 2 of them very badly. I was distressed, said Churchill with memorable understatement, to find that everyone was armed with revolvers except myself, who had an American carbine.
What's the American carbine?
Rifle.
Rifle.
Yeah. Still, the little party fought on until the revolver ammunition was gone and Churchill was down to a single magazine for his carbine. A German mortar round killed 3 of his little party and wounded still another, leaving Churchill as the only unwounded defender of the hilltop. It was the end. Churchill turned to his pipes, playing Will Ye No Come Back Again, until German grenades burst in his position. He was stunned by a fragment from one of them. He regained consciousness to discover German soldiers prodding us, apparently to discover who was alive. Long after the end of the war, Churchill was pleased to hear that the German account of the fighting for the hill described his lonely piping as the doleful sound of an unknown musical instrument. That's pretty funny. But they put him in a concentration camp.
Terrible.
Damn.
Wouldn't be the first one.
Oh, I bet.
Or it won't be the last one.
There you go.
That's the right way to say it. Jack Churchill would play his pipes one more time at the funeral of 14 commandos who died on the slopes of Hill 622. He and his surviving men escaped killing by the Gestapo under Hitler's foul commando order through the chivalry of one Captain Thuner of Wehrmacht. You are as a soldier as I am, the captain told Churchill. I refuse to allow these civilian butchers to deal with you. I shall say nothing of having received this order. After the war, Churchill was able to personally thank Thuner for his decency and to help him stay out of the merciless hands of the Russians. Churchill was flown to Sarajevo and then on to Berlin. There was apparently being some thought that he was a relative of Winston Churchill. There's also a story that on leaving the aircraft, he left behind a burning match or a candle or a pile of paper, producing a fire and considering fire and a considerable confusion. During the inquiry that followed, Churchill innocently told the furious Luftwaffe officer that the army officer escorting Churchill had been smoking and reading the paper on board the aircraft. Churchill spent some time in solitary confinement. In time, he ended up in the Sachsenhausen concentration camp. That infamous prison was only one more challenge to Churchill. However, and in September 1944, he and an RAF officer crawled under the wire through an abandoned drain and set out for a walk to the Baltic coast. Their luck was in, however, and they were recaptured near the coastal city of Rostock, only a few miles from the sea. In time, they were moved to the camp at Niederdorf, Austria. Here, Churchill watched for another opportunity to escape, keeping a small rusty can and some onions hidden in his jacket in case a sudden opportunity should present itself. On an April night in 1945, it did. The chance came when the camp's lighting system failed. Churchill seized the moment and walked away from the work detail, disappearing into the darkness and heading for the Alps and for the Italian frontier. Liberating vegetables from Austrian gardens and cooking them in his tin can, he walked stealthily south, keeping off the roads. He crossed the Brenner Pass into Italy and headed for Verona, some 150 miles away. Hitching a ride with the Americans. On the 8th day of his escape, hobbling along with a sprained ankle, Churchill caught sight of a column of armored vehicles. To his delight, the hulls carried the unmistakable white star of the United States Army. He managed to flag down one vehicle and persuade the crew that in spite of his scruffy appearance, he was indeed a British colonel. As he later told an old friend and biographer, Rex King Clark, I couldn't walk very well and was so out of breath I could scarcely talk, but I still managed a credible Sandhurst salute, which may have done the trick. Churchill was free but frustrated. The European War was almost over, and he had missed much of it, including the chance to further promotion, perhaps the opportunity to lead a commando brigade. Nevertheless, hope rang eternal. However, he said to his friends, there's still the he's talking about the Japanese. He's like, there's still some Japanese left, right? That's basically what he said. But there were. So Churchill was off to Burma, and there was the largest land war against Japan, and it was still raging. Here too, however, he met frustration, for by the time he reached India, Hiroshima and Nagasaki had disappeared in mushroom clouds, and the war was abruptly over. For a warrior like Churchill, the end of the fighting was bittersweet. You know, he said to a friend, only half joking, if it hadn't been for them damn Yanks, we could have kept the war going for another 10 years. Then he died an old man.
Very interesting life he led.
Amazing.
Yeah, there was one more story. After that, he got called back, and it was in the Middle East. And there was basically like a ambush, and there was a bunch of medical convoy people pinned down. So he just walked right up to it, smiling. He got everybody out, laid down the law.
I'd say he was a lucky son of a bitch. That's what I say.
Or crazy. Yeah, and died an old man. Fucking hell, exactly. Life he got from overseas.
Joseph Walter for $1.99. Thank you, Joseph Walter. Much appreciated. White Death is good for World War II. Yeah, I wanted to bring that one up tonight, definitely. So that's definitely nice. Thank you, Joseph. Have you guys heard about that one?
No.
Timo Hayaka. He was from Finland. He served his mandatory, 1 year mandatory, 8 year in the military, and then became a farmer.
We're all clear,
But
Commander.
in 1939, the Soviet Union invaded his homeland. So he decided he wanted to help his country. So since the majority of the fighting took place in the forest, he figured the best way to stop the invasion was to grab his trusty rifle, a couple cans of food, and hide in a tree all day shooting the Russians. 6 feet of snow.
Cargo scoop deployed.
Now, the Russians heard that dozens of men were going down, and it was all because of one dude with a rifle. He became known as the White Death because of his white camouflage outfit. They actually mounted a whole mission just to kill that one guy. They sent out a task force to find him and take him out, and he killed them all. And they tried to get together a team of counter snipers. He killed all of them too. Over the course of 100 days, he killed 542 people with his rifle.
Holy
He
shit.
took another 150 or so with his SMG, sending his credited kill count up to 705.
Those aren't rookie numbers.
Hell no. Hell no. It's a mean motherfucker.
Since everyone they had was either too dead or too scared to go to near him, the Russians carpet bombed everywhere they thought he would be. Supposedly, they had the location right, and he actually got hit by a cloud of shrapnel that tore his coat up, but it didn't actually hurt him, because he's the fucking White Death. On March 6, 1940, some bastard shot him in the head with an exploding bullet. When some other soldiers found him and brought him back to his base, he had half of his head missing. The White Death had finally been stopped. For about a week, in spite of having come down with a nasty case of shot in the face syndrome, he was still very much alive.
What the fuck?
He regained consciousness on March 13th, the very day that
How was he after that?
Amazing.
Probably pretty ornery.
Well, I think there's a face shot. So,
He got shot in the face with an exploding bullet and he didn't die.
That's right. Too fucking mean.
Guess so. She put up with her shit.
Death was scared of the White Death.
rumors of his death spread around Finland and the Soviet Union. He regained consciousness a week later on the 13th of March, when day peace was declared. He read about his own death in the newspaper and sent all to correct the misunderstanding. He spent 14 months recovering from his wounds and 26 soldiers. He was born in He was awarded the first and second class medals of Liberty, as well as the third and fourth cross of He's now wearing he received the elite player Sako Ershchikova honorary rifle, donated by Eugene Johansson, a Swedish businessman. was the collections in the military museum in Finland after the dissolution of the North Korean.
He really didn't like commies. Not one bit.
He was known as a modest man who opposed to the wartime sports. He was asked in 1998 how he could slavery practice. He was asked in 2001.
He's like, I shot 500 people. That's how I got good at it.
Shortly before his 96th birthday, if he felt remorse for killing so many people. He replied, I did what I was told to do as well as I could. There would be no Finland unless everyone else had done the same. He spent his last years in the War Veterans Nursing Home, where he died at the age of 96. He was buried in his hometown.
Oh, in a nursing home.
Yeah, but he was in like a Finnish nursing home.
Meaning what I think you're meaning?
I imagine they're pretty nice in Finnish nursing homes.
Okay. Maybe not.
Who knows?
You know?
He basically got rid of like a whole graduating class of commies.
No shit, man. One guy.
I couldn't think of a better analogy. It's like a lot of football teams. You got rid of like the whole AFC worth of commies.
You know, they put things on their helmets for kills. You need a bigger helmet.
Oh, helmet's white.
Yeah,
Chalk
right?
marks.
Right? Shit. Impressive. Killing machine.
Stories of valor. Stories of valor.
It's really about not giving up.
Yugrinder Singh Yadav was a member of an Indian Grenadier battalion during a conflict with Pakistan in 1999. Their mission was to climb Tiger Hill and neutralize the 3 enemy bunkers at the top. But this meant climbing a sheer 100-foot cliff face of solid ice. Since they didn't want to climb up one at a time with ice axes, they sent one guy on it. He fastened ropes to the cliff as he went, so everybody else could climb up the rope. So Yadav volunteered. Halfway up the cliff, enemies stationed on adjacent mountain opened fire, shooting them with an RPG, then spraying assault rifle fire. Half the squad was killed. The rest were scattered. Despite being shot 3 times, 60. When he reached the top, one of the target bunkers opened fire on the machine guns. He ran towards the hail of bullets, pitched a grenade into the ground, before everyone was out. At this point, the second bunker was clear shot, and was ran back, taking bullets while he did it. Killed 4 heavily armed men inside his hands.
Jesus fucking Christ, who is this guy?
The remainder of his squad was standing at the top of the cliff staring at him. They only took the third bunker and went trying. They gouged from the sheer ice. It was awarded the Param Veer Chakra, India's highest military award. Unlike the Medal of Honor, the Param Veer Chakra is only given for the rarest of rarest family treatment, which is beyond the call of duty and which in normal life is considered impossible to do.
I like to see most people climb 60 feet up a ice face.
Anyway,
Yeah,
unharmed.
like in a chill situation.
Yeah.
Now let's shoot your ass 3 times after you see everybody you know just got killed with RPG,
Yeah.
and then you go up into gunfire.
And still keep going.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, he probably felt like, I just got to keep climbing. I got to get out of this. I got to get out of this. I got to get out of this. I'm not going to fucking die here. And then he got to the top and he was just like, fuck my life. And he was like, you know what? Fuck it. Hand grenade.
Had to have
Survival instinct.
He
Yeah,
got hit
just
by
like
21 bullets.
21
Shit,
bullets.
It's crazy how he didn't even. Why did he not bleed out?
Oh.
You know? That's nuts. Yeah, he earned his medal, that's for sure.
21 bullets. Meanwhile, he kills 4 guys with his bare hands.
Right?
First off, you're tired from climbing up there. You got shot 3 times on the way. You're losing blood the whole way up. You just take out one thing, then you go up and you just like go berserk on 4 dudes. Like, pretty. He must have had so much adrenaline and chemicals kicking through his body.
Something, man.
They're probably like blasting him at point blank range, and he's just breaking necks and like crashing people in the concrete.
Right?
Like, not today. You get a shitty bullet.
Damn right, not today.
Then after that, you got to think, oh, now it's I got to find medical attention for my 21 gun wounds. Got the 21 gun salute.
Crazy.
How many of those were still inside of him at the time?
God knows. Probably most of them. I mean, if you know.
It's amazing how fragile a human being is, and then a human can survive something like that.
I know.
Taking a lot of
I know,
hits,
it doesn't make
Commander.
any sense, does it?
No, you really don't.
So, there's a guy named Leon Major. He was a one-eyed, one-man army. He barely made a meter of food. The family's called him shortly after joining the Canadian Army in 19.
Shield generator is down.
He wasn't a
Diverse
career
power
soldier.
systems.
He only joined up because he was unemployed. He wanted to prove to his father he wasn't a loser. Once he arrived on the Western Front, he took to it like a duck to water. Major was involved in the D-Day landings, taking part in the Canadian part of the line at Juno Beach. He made an early mark on his fellow soldiers, managing to take down a German Hanomag half-track armored car single-handedly. Before, several days later, killing 4 SS men. He was injured by a grenade, however, and lost an eye, earning himself the nickname Pirate. He fought on, using extreme bravery to scout out enemy lines, and placed himself as a sniper, arguing that having just one eye actually assisted his aim. His finest hour would come in early 1945. As Canadian forces moved north into the Netherlands. He was one of his 4 regular scouting missions on his own and came across 2 Germans. He captured one, then used him as a human shield to entice the other. The second one went for his gun. Major shot him. He moved towards the Nazi garrison and managed to capture the commanding officer, causing the whole group to hand themselves over. Major began single-handedly, remember, to march a huge group of enemy soldiers around. He was spotted by an SS patrol. They opened fire and killed several of their own men.
Nice, good job.
He took 93 prisoners all on his own.
It's amazing that that many people just get led by one person because they got the upper hand. Fucking amazing.
Now, despite suffering a broken back and a landmine incident, he escaped from a hospital and returned to the front.
Requesting backup. I'm
He
under
was
heavy
sent to
fire.
recon the Dutch
Got
towers
him.
of
Another one
William, a
down.
fellow Canadian soldier. When Carter was killed, he continued alone and captured an officer who was drinking in a bar.
Incoming message.
This area is
Person
clear,
was
Commander.
French,
Standing down.
was Quebecers, while the officer came from a French-speaking region of the place. He convinced the German the Canadians were going to blow Zorro to bits the next day. He let him go, and the officer ran back to headquarters, spreading the news of an incoming assault. Major then fired his machine gun randomly throughout the city, chucking grenades and creating the impression that a huge force had arrived. All the while, as patrols were sent out to investigate the noises, he would capture them in groups of 10 and take them to the Canadian forces. By dawn, the whole SS garrison were convinced they were surrounded and about to be destroyed, so they fled. Canadians entered the city and liberated it without a shot being fired.
This guy's crazy as a shit house rat.
He was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal. He would win another for his bravery in the Korean War. Eventually retired to his home in the Montreal suburbs. He died there in 2008 at the age of 87.
Wow. Oh, man.
Pirate.
Don't fuck with Grandpa.
Hell no. Amazing. Makes you wonder what drives somebody like that, you know?
I still want to know why like almost 100 dudes listen to one person marching them along.
I trust them,
You marched them right into a fucking gunfire of their own guys.
you know?
Beautiful.
It's crazy.
One way to make an omelet.
Digby, I believe is the
Scan
name.
detected.
Digby?
Digby, yeah. Let me just pull up this info real quick. Let me just stop a minute and pull up some info on this dude I'm thinking of.
You want me to do one in the meantime?
I got him right here.
Alright.
All right.
Cargo scoop detected.
From one English eccentric to another, if there is at least some level of semblance of logic in carrying the broadsword that Mad Jack Churchill did, in the sense that it is at least a weapon if archaic, then there seemed little point to carrying an umbrella, as Digby Tatham Warcher did. The man known only as Digby, partially because of his cumbersome double-barreled surname, partially because there weren't too many other Digbys knocking around the British Army, was as mad a member of the British officer class as any. Like Churchill, he went to the Royal Military College at Sandhurst and joined the colonial service, finding himself in the Raj in 1937. He was due to join the local Indian Army but never did, preferring to stay in the British forces and give himself more time to indulge in his pastime of hunting tigers and wild boars. He missed the early part of the war while in India, but in 1942, after his brother was killed in North Africa, he went to England to link up with the Parachute Regiment. He didn't do much fighting initially. He once commandeered a Dakota plane to take his friends to a party. And when he did eventually see combat in the Netherlands, he took to it with aplomb. He trained his troops in the Neoplatonic era bugle call messaging in case their radios broke, and decided, as he couldn't trust himself to remember all the necessary code words, he would carry his umbrella with him at all times. The logic being that only a bloody fool of an Englishman would do such a thing. He was, in some small way, right. As if the sight of a soldier sporting an umbrella into battle wasn't enough, he topped it off with a bowler hat, charging with his bayonet towards German lines, looking more like a city gent with a gin and tonic than a parachute commander that he was. When faced by an enemy armored vehicle, he did the obvious thing. He disabled the driver by poking him in the eye with his brolly. He spotted a military chaplain in distress and rescued him, telling the stricken clergyman, "Don't worry about the bullets. I've got an umbrella."
It's crazy.
You wonder how many of these people were like slightly just suicidal.
Right?
Like,
Yeah.
here's a German tank. I'm gonna poke this guy in the eye.
Definitely
It
got a
reminds
death
me
wish.
of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Hmm.
Not to mention the Penguin.
Hmm. Yeah.
Give me the tank. Wah, wah, wah.
Definitely, I think you're right. Definitely get a.
Insane.
He was captured, but escaped, and was taken in by a local Dutch woman. Knowing he would easily be rumbled as British officers, the Dutch resistance dressed him and his companion up as painters and gave them Dutch identity documents telling them to pose as deaf mutes. The Germans were oblivious, failing to spot the two Brits, despite them living in the same house, as several Nazi soldiers. All the while, the pair were bicycling between escaped soldiers, delivering messages and organizing an evacuation. He eventually made his way to the Rhine, where he crossed over the lines and was taken back to Britain. Digby Tatham Walter was awarded the Distinguished Service Order for his exploits in the Netherlands, and after the war finished, served in Palestine and East Africa.
These SS officers didn't think it was weird that there was two deaf mutes in the same house.
Who knows?
It sounds like this. They use like the plot of an '80s sitcom to overwhelm like Nazi Germany.
Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah, like.
Well, he continued to live in Kenya when he left the forces, and is credited as one of the pioneers of the concept of a safari, a fitting role for a man who once delighted in hunting tigers.
Wow.
History doesn't record if he still carried his umbrella out while photographing animals, however. So yeah.
I've got an umbrella.
Every day doing that must have been such a gamble.
Hell yeah.
That's insane. That's a lot of pressure.
I'd say he really was crazy. I mean, maybe he really did believe his umbrella would protect him. You know?
It's a bulletproof umbrella.
Yeah.
Maybe it's one of those James Bond spy ones.
Right?
Yeah.
Joseph Aldrin for $1.99. Thank you, Joseph Aldrin. Much appreciated. Joseph says Japanese 442 World War II Battalion American is badass. Are these planes we're talking about? I don't know. I don't know what you mean, Joseph
It's
Aldrin.
battalion, right? Battalion 442. Is that what he means?
No.
No? Okay.
I will watch. I will watch in the chat if you want to clear that up. Just type it, whatever. I'm keeping an eye out. Infantry. No, infantry. Okay. Okay. We talked about the white death here. Digby. He married the daughter of Captain Roderick Boulty Boyd, granddaughter of Arthur George Egerton, 5th Earl
Waterwick?
of Wilton.
You don't get the joke. Never mind. That would have been funny if you got it.
No, I didn't get it.
Monty Python reference. Anyway.
Oh, I'm not a fan of Monty Python.
Oh, yeah.
I just missed it.
Yes, everybody. I don't like the Monty Python. I don't like the Beatles. I don't like Elvis.
You don't like nothing.
I do like the Monty Python, but I agree on the rest.
I like Monty Python.
I think there's thunder so bad that it's shaking the house.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
Florida
just
all
hearing
the
it.
time.
Thundering in the East Coast.
Yeah, Florida's like that, Pete. Maybe Amy's in the now. Well, that was a crotch rocket.
I was on with Rob while I was working on that video earlier, and yeah, I was hearing thunder at his place.
Yeah, it rained off and on all day here too. It's like a gloomy ass day today, but it kept that temperature down. I didn't mind. But as you can hear, I'm congested from it.
Yeah. Getting congested from something. I don't know what.
Stressed congestion.
Probably.
Congestion.
All right, mind if I cover Charles Carpenter?
Oh, go right ahead.
All right. Now, Charles Carpenter was a lieutenant colonel. His nickname was Bazooka Charlie. Another name for him was the Mad Major. He lived from 1913 to 1966. He was a U.S. Army officer and Army observation pilot who served during World War II. He is best remembered for destroying several enemy tanks and armored vehicles, and his bazooka-equipped L-4 Grasshopper light observation aircraft, which he jerry-rigged himself. Basically, I don't have an airplane sitting here, but we've all seen an airplane. On the wings, he put 4 bazookas on each side, and he rigged them to a switch inside of the cockpit, so he'd be able to fire both wings independently. It'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, you know. So he'd have to come and swipe with one side, then he'd have to go around again. He'd have to swipe with the other side, and then he'd have to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, what the German takes were impenetrable from the bottom, right?
Yeah, from the front, from the sides, but from the top, they're weak because nobody expects that shit.
Right.
Now, the weird thing about him was that he was born and raised in Illinois. After graduation from Rock Island High School and Center College in Danville, Kentucky, Carpenter took a job teaching history at Moline High School in Moline, Illinois. He had a wife named Elda and a child named Carol. But he was just a history teacher, man. Now, Carpenter joined the Army in 1942, and he was commissioned as a second lieutenant. After completing flight training and receiving his artillery license and wings, Carpenter flew light observation aircraft such as the L-4 Grasshopper also called a Piper Cub, and the Stinson L5 Sentinel. He accumulated considerable flight time while he was doing training missions and doing artillery spotting and enemy reconnaissance and observation. He was promoted to the rank of major in 1944. Carpenter was assigned to combat duty in France with the 1st Bombardment Division. Upon arrival, he was assigned an L4H and assigned to fly artillery support and reconnaissance missions in support of the U.S. 4th Armored Division, part of General George S. Patton's 3rd Army. The Piper L4H was a military version of the Piper J3 Cub, a small fabric-covered, unarmored, two-seat aircraft with a fixed-pitch propeller and a 65-horsepower Continental O173 engine. This thing's a piece of shit, is what they're getting at. One of the few distinguishing differences to the Piper L4 redesign was the addition of additional plexiglass windows above the wing center section and behind the wing's tailing edge to increase visibility for the pilot and observer. With a 150-pound pilot and no radio aboard, the L4H had a combined cargo and passenger weight capacity of approximately 232 pounds.
Not very
That's
much.
it?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yo, this plane can't even keep a fucking radio in the air.
Right? I thought it'd be like a crop duster or something, you know?
It'd be better off with a crop duster.
Yeah, apparently. 232 pounds. That ain't nothing.
So apparently he weighed just enough to put some bazookas on this bitch.
That ain't nothing for weight. That's crazy.
By the time of the Allied siege of Lorient and the encirclement of German forces around that city, Carpenter had grown increasingly frustrated at his inability to attack German armor on those occasions when the Allied artillery or tactical aircraft were either out of range or were engaged in other combat missions. Inspired by other L4 pilots who had installed bazookas as anti-tank armament on their planes, and with the assistance of an ordnance technician as well as the support from the 9th Air Force Service Command, Carpenter first attached 2 M1 rocket launchers, or bazookas, to the underwing struts of his L4H, which he named Rosie the Rocketeer. After some experimenting, Carpenter would later add 2 more rocket launchers, then 2 more for a total of 6 bazookas, 3 mounted just above each set of lift struts per side, just outboard of the L4's jury struts. The M1 bazooka rocket launcher itself was a solid one-piece metal tube 54 inches long, or 137 centimeters long, and with an unloaded weight of slightly more than 13 pounds a piece. Carpenter's original armament of 6 M1 bazookas each fired one single M6 anti-tank rocket by means of battery igniter and toggle lanyard control operated from the cockpit.
It makes you wonder how that plane flew with that weight added to it, you know?
I know.
Shit.
Probably not very fucking well.
No.
The M6 rocket's heat warhead could penetrate approximately 3 inches of armor at a 30-degree impact angle. While the M1A1 rocket launcher was initially less than successful when employed by infantry against the frontal armor of the German tanks, Carpenter found that using the weapon as an airborne armament scheme in the manner of plunging fire from an elevated position was fairly effective at immobilizing a German tank, with any solid hit against the inner armor protecting the top of the turret or the whole superstructure, even against such heavy tanks as the Tiger I. Although the M6 rocket had a theoretical range of 500 yards, Carpenter preferred to fire his rockets at a range of 100 yards or less, adjusting the angle and bore sighting of the launcher tube so that when his L4H was aligned with the enemy vehicle in a shallow dive, the rockets would strike the target. Yeah, so he knew his distance, so he just pulled.
Do you know how close that would be flying
Yeah, 100 yards. It's a
Oh my
football field.
God.
It's pretty fucking short.
Oh my God. That
When
is.
you're up there, that'll feel like about 20 feet,
That's what I'm saying.
especially going out of a dive bomb position.
Oh my God. Wow.
Well, he's got to drop that weight of the missile so he could pull up again.
Yeah. Which I'm sure, yeah, helped once that weight was dropped off. Holy hell.
All right, so he starts doing his attacks. Major Carpenter flew most of his ground attack missions alone, as the additional weight of an extra passenger greatly limited the L4 Cub's speed and maneuverability when fitted with bazookas. Also, maybe he could have 232 pounds of additional weight besides himself.
Oh, okay.
That makes more
Is
sense.
that what it was? Okay. I was thinking certainly that whole structure.
Yeah, because if you could put a co-pilot or a gunner
Yeah.
or something.
I mean, I've known people way more than 232, you know?
Oh,
A
yeah.
lot of people.
On other occasions, when he took along an extra passenger, Carpenter found that he was forced to fire his rockets from a considerably higher altitude to avoid enemy counterfire, which resulted in fewer hits owing to the effects of the wind and the range estimation. Blech. Mouth is getting dry.
He was just eyeing it out, huh?
Mm-hmm. Hey, he's shooting this shit from the hip.
Right? That's great.
When attacking, Carpenter's usual routine was to spot his target at altitude, then spiral down before diving suddenly towards the enemy tank or other objective. Complete destruction of the enemy tank was not necessary. If the tank was set ablaze or simply immobilized due to engine, track, or turret damage, the Panzer crew generally abandoned the vehicle. Within a few weeks, Carpenter was credited with knocking out a German armored car and 4 tanks, including 2 Tiger IS.
Holy shit.
Known as Bazooka Charlie or the Mad Major by those in his unit, Carpenter's exploits were soon featured in numerous press accounts, including Stars and Stripes, the Associated Press, Popular Science, New York Sun, and Liberty Magazine. In addition to flying ground attacks and observation missions, Major Carpenter served as a personal pilot for the U.S. Army General John S. Wood, the commanding general of the U.S. 4th Armored Division. His duties as personal pilot, along with his comparatively elevated service rank for an artillery liaison pilot of major, allowed Carpenter to evade most artillery spotting missions, thus giving him more time to devote to his own private war with the German armored units. Carpenter took in ground combat as well. On one occasion near Avranches, Carpenter was scouting advanced landing fields in a jeep when German forces attacked his position. Climbing aboard a Sherman tank, Carpenter took charge of a .50 caliber machine gun while calling for troops around him to attack. Led by tank fire from Carpenter's Sherman, the American forces drove the attacking German forces back. Carpenter's Sherman eventually ran into friendly forces and accidentally fired on a Sherman bulldozer tank, blowing off the dozer blade. As a result of this friendly fire incident, Carpenter was placed under arrest and threatened with the firing squad until his commanding general came to his assistance. Told to expect a court-martial for his actions at Avranches, the decision to discipline Carter was reversed by General Patton himself, who not only stopped the court-martial proceedings but awarded the major a Silver Star for bravery. Carpenter, Patton had said, was the kind of fighting man he wanted in his army. During the 1944 Allied offensive in France, Major Carpenter continually improved the armament of the Rosie the Rocketeer, eventually installing 6 improved Type M9 bazookas, using the new M6A3 heat rocket, which could penetrate 3.9 inches of armor plating at a 30-degree angle.
Kick-ass.
So basically 0.9 more inches.
Right.
Each trio of M9 launcher tubes was mounted side by side atop a plate in the same general locations as the earlier bazookas. Launch tubes have been mounted. Even the heaviest German tanks, such as the Tiger Os B, or King Tiger, the Nazis' most dangerous tank, used thinner 40mm and 45mm armor on the tops of their turrets and hull superstructure, which the M6A3 bazooka rocket warhead could easily penetrate. As before, a battery of 3 M9 launchers was installed side by side on each pair of underwing struts. It weighed about 106 pounds, not counting the weight of the mounting brackets and the firing controls. By using an electrical firing mechanism connected to a push-button control on the cockpit-mounted panel, Carpenter could fire his 6 rockets either individually or a salvo of all 6 at one time. That's pretty good. Pretty hip.
And this dude was a math teacher, right?
History teacher.
History teacher, okay. And he was a teacher.
It's funny.
Just a teacher. Just a calm teacher.
Hey, Mr. Carpenter. Yeah.
Just a teacher. That's how it goes with some of these guys, you know. They just step up to the plate and
yeah. Apparently, Pete.
Now, there's a guy named Audie Murphy. He was an American soldier, actor, songwriter, and rancher. He was one of the most decorated American combat soldiers of World War II. He received every military combat award for valor available from the U.S. Army, as well as a French and Belgian award for heroism. He received the Medal of Honor for valor that he demonstrated at the age of 19 for single-handedly holding off a company of German soldiers for an hour at the Colmar Pocket in France in January 1945, then leading a successful counterattack while wounded and out of ammunition. Wow. He was born into a large family of sharecroppers in Hunt County, Texas. His father abandoned them. His mother died when he was a teenager. He left school in the 5th grade to pick cotton and find other work to help support his family. His skill with a hunting rifle helped feed his family. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, Murphy's older sister helped him to falsify documents about his birth date in order to meet the minimum age requirements for enlisting in the military. Turned down for initially being underweight by the Army, Navy, and Marine Corps, he was eventually able to enlist in the Army. He first saw action in the 1943 Allied invasion of Sicily. Then in 1944, he participated in the Battle of Anzio, the liberation of Rome, and the invasion of southern France. Murphy fought in Montmillard and led his men on a successful assault at La Homette Quarry near Sellerie in northeastern France in October. After the war, Murphy embarked on a 21-year acting career. He played himself in the 1955 autobiographical film To Hell and Back, based on his 1949 memoirs of the same name.
No kidding, man.
You know, the thing with that, though, is he thought some of the stories that he had lived were so unbelievable that he had them removed from the movie. Like,
wow, really?
Yeah, so he had them cut some scenes. Because he thought people wouldn't believe it. He thought that he'd be telling a tall tale. The most of his roles were in westerns. He made guest appearances on celebrity television shows and starred in the series Whispering Smith. Murphy was a fairly accomplished songwriter. He bred quarter horses in California and Arizona and became a regular participant in horse racing. Suffering from what would today be described as post-traumatic stress disorder, Murphy slept with a loaded ambulance for He looked for solace in addictive sleeping pills. In his last few years, he was plagued by money problems, but refused offers to appear in alcohol and cigarette commercials because he didn't want to set a bad example. He died in a plane crash in Virginia in 1971, which was shortly before his 46th birthday. He was interred with military honors at Arlington National Cemetery, where his grave is one of the most visible.
He was so young. How is he broke? Man, God, how is he broke?
I don't know.
You know, 21 years of being an actor, and certainly had to get military benefits and stuff. Wow. That's a shame.
Well, he married an actress named Wanda Hendricks in 1949. Their divorce became final 2 years later in 1959. 4 days later, he married airline stewardess named Pamela Lee Archer, with whom he had 2 sons. Murphy bred quarter horses and is now in Menifee, California, at the Murphy Ranch in Pima County. His horse raced at the Del Mar racetrack, and he invested large sums of money in the hobby. Murphy's gambling left his finances in a poor state.
Oh, well, there you go.
In 1968, he stated he had lost $260,000 in an Algerian oil deal and was dealing with the Internal Revenue Service over unpaid taxes. In spite of his financial difficulties, he refused to appear in commercials for alcohol and cigarettes, mindful of the influence.
Pretty horse.
Dave McClure, his collaborator on the book To Hell and Back, discovered Murphy's talent for poetry during their work on the memoir, when he found discarded verses in Murphy's Hollywood apartment. One of those poems, The Crosses Grow on Anzo, appears in To Hell and Back, attributed to a soldier named Kerrigan. Only 2 others survived, Alone and Far Removed and Freedom Flies in Your Heart Like an Eagle. The latter was part of a speech Murphy had written in a 1968 dedication of the Alabama War Memorial in Montgomery, and was later set to music by Scott Turner under the title Dusty Old Howard. Murphy was a fan of country music, in particular Bob Willis and Chet Atkins, but not a singer and musician himself. Though his friend Guy Mitchell of Murphy was introduced to songwriter Scott Turner in 1961. The 2 collaborated on numerous songs between 1962 and 1970, the most successful of which was Shutters and Boards and When the Wind Blows in Chicago. When the wind blows in Chicago. I don't know.
I'd say, do you know it really?
No, I don't know.
I like 80s country.
I haven't heard it. For the old ones, like I probably like have heard, but
Just don't know.
a real old-fashioned country.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of fun.
I like, the old.
But
Old.
I mean, I can't. I'm not like a big country person.
No.
I got one more good one.
Okay, we've got about 8 minutes.
Spit it out.
All right, this guy was a senator. He died in 2012. His name is Daniel Inouye. But among other things, he was, I believe, the highest level Asian American in the government. But he was also in the woe. He was in the woe. But Dan was born in Honolulu, Hawaii. His parents had immigrated from Japan to settle in Hawaii's Bingham Tract, which was a Chinese-American enclave in Honolulu. Coming of age tension grew as Imperial Japan was hard enough. Graduating from high school in Hawaii as a Japanese American immediately following the surprise attack of Pearl Harbor, leading to the death of over 1,000 Americans, proved especially difficult for him. Curfews were enforced for Japanese Americans in Hawaii. There was an attempt to ship them to internment camps, but the local economy for the islands relied heavily on the Japanese American businesses. He attempted to enlist in the military, but was turned away. He spent a year enduring insults and being questioned about his patriotism. In 1943, when the U.S. Army dropped its enlistment ban of Japanese Americans, Inouye curtailed his pre-medical studies at the University of Hawaii and enlisted in the Army. All right. Now, this is where the shit hit the fan. He had done a bunch of stuff before this, but this is the important part. Inouye in the 442nd proved their unbridled valor in the Vosges Mountains when they were ordered to find and rescue a lost battalion of 400 U.S. infantry cut off and surrounded by German forces. In 5 days of battle in the fall of 1944, the 442nd broke through German defenses and rescued 211 men. The 442nd suffered over 800 casualties.
Is that what Joseph was talking about? 442?
Oh, maybe. One company went with 185 men. 8 walked out unhurt. K Company began with 186 men, 17 walked out. As a result of his courageous, Sergeant Inouye was given courageousness, it should be. Sergeant Inouye was given a battlefield commission to second lieutenant. At one point, while he was leading an attack, a German round struck him in the chest directly above his heart. But the bullet was stopped by $2 silver he happened to have stacked in his shirt pocket. That's like a movie. He continued to carry the coins throughout the war in his shirt pocket as good luck charms. Shit. I get a couple more. 3 members of the 442nd were awarded the Medal of Honor for their participation in rescue, although due to discrimination at the time, they did not receive their medals until 2000. Their names were Barney Harajiro, James Akubo, and George Sakato. Alright. Now, this is where he loses his arm. In early 1945, Lieutenant Inouye and the 442nd redeployed to the Gothic Line for 9 months in 1944. German Field Marshal Kesselring directed the construction of the Gothic Line along the top of the Apennines in the mountains joining Italy and France. This included the TOTS organization, known for its fortifications at Monte Cassino. It was impossible terrain in the worst possible scenario for the American forces attacking the uphill against the well-fortified and dug-in German infantry with artillery. On April 21st, 1945, Lieutenant Inouye was leading a flanking attack on the heavily defended ridge near San Terenzo in Tuscany, Italy. The American platoon was in turn flanked in a surprise ambush by 3 MG-43 machine guns at a relatively close range. Inouye's platoon of 30 men was being cut to pieces. He stood up to look for the best avenue for cover when he was shot in the stomach. Ignoring his wound, he proceeded to attack and destroy the first machine gun nest with hand grenades and his Thompson machine gun. When informed of the severity of his wound, he refused treatment and rallied his men for an attack on the second machine gun position, which he successfully destroyed before collapsing from blood loss. As his squad distracted the third machine gunner, Inouye crawled toward the final bunker, coming within 10 yards of it. As he raised himself up and cocked his arm to throw his last grenade, a German soldier inside the bunker fired a rifle grenade, which struck his right elbow, nearly severing most of his arm and leaving his prime grenade reflexively clenched in a fist that suddenly didn't belong to me anymore. Inouye's horrified soldiers moved to his aid, but he shouted for them to keep back out of fear. His severed fist would involuntarily relax and drop the grenade. While the Germans inside the bunker reloaded his rifle, Inouye pried the live grenade from his useless right hand and transferred it to his left.
Get out.
As the enemy soldier aimed his rifle at him, Inouye tossed the grenade into the bunker and destroyed it.
Son of a
He
bitch.
stumbled to his feet and continued forward, silencing the last German resistance with a one-handed burst from his Thompson before being wounded in the leg and tumbling unconscious to the bottom of the ridge. He awoke to see the worried men of his platoon hovering over him. His only comment before being carried away was to order them back to their position, saying nobody called off the war. The remainder of Inouye's mutilated right arm was later amputated at a field hospital and without proper anesthesia, as he was given too much morphine at an aid station, and it was feared any more in his blood system would lower his blood pressure enough to kill him. He had to endure the arm being sawn off without anesthesia.
Oh my god.
He ceased carrying around his lucky silver dollars in his breast pocket.
You know how much that happened though back then? Like where they would amputate
Saw
without.
off
That's
arm.
where like the bullet comes from. Yeah, they all had
Yeah.
gangrene.
Oh my god. Yeah,
Awful.
sawing.
Oh.
Sawing.
Could you imagine pulling the fucking hand grenade out of your own hand?
Ugh.
No. No, it'd be so. Oh,
No.
I don't
Yeah.
want to.
That's a guy who really didn't want to die that day.
Hell no.
A local man too angry to die.
Too pissed off to die.
That's badass.
Well, that's going to do it for tonight, everybody. I'm so thankful you can tune in with us and join us here night after night, day after day, as we delve into the world of the weird. I want to say thank you to Joseph Aldridge for your generous super chats there. Much appreciated. Never expected, but always appreciated. Thank you so much. Thank you, my panel, for being here. And guys, don't forget to check out the description of this video where you'll find links to my Twitter and my email. Likewise, links to the Teespring store. I'm doing a Teespring sale, 15% off. It is promo code July Xmas. Promo code July Xmas on the Teespring store for 15% off, and that's running until the end of the month. Patreon supporters, thank you very much if you're a Patreon supporter, and if you're in a position to become a Patreon supporter for just $1 a month, that's $1 a week. It's less than the price of a cup of coffee. I hope you feel what we do here is worth $1 a week. I appreciate it. Links to everybody else's channel are down below. Don't hesitate to subscribe to them as well. And as we do here, this is the Creepy Little Book Live. You've been listening to High Strangeness.
Hang on a second. After the stream tonight, Mecha's gonna be streaming, so you guys don't forget to head over there.
I don't know if I'm doing YouTube or Twitch, and that's not going to be like right away either. It's gonna be in a bit.
Well, anyways, be looking out for that for Mecha either on Twitch and on Twitch. What is your name on Twitch?
Random Game User 42.
Random Game User 42.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, Pete. We need that in.
I remember what party he was on so we could pick up the signal.
Sorry.
I knew you'd forgotten that, so I didn't want you to do it.
Oh, it's alright. I didn't want to like.
Number one late night paranormal podcast. I've been your host Pete, and with me tonight were Tina Tomazuski, Mecha Random 42, and Jesse Miller at the Nose Nest. Until tomorrow.
Scan detected. Scan detected. Target shields offline. Target destroyed.
Good job, Commander. No more threats in this sector.
Cargo scoop deployed. Scan detected. Cargo scoop retracted. Flight assist off. Flight assist on. Frameshift drive charging.
Okay, Commander. Fighter is on the way back. Fighter retrieval sequence complete, Commander. We're clear
Frameshift
to
drive
depart.
charging.